Okay. Go ahead, Jose.
We have some technical issues over. All right, everyone. Thank you for being here tonight. We're gonna start now. Perfect. Welcome to tonight's Second Avenue Subway Task Force. It is March 24th and it is 6:43 p.m. We will now begin. We can start with our roll call, Angel.
Committee members, when I call your name, please answer present. Jose Altamirano,
Present.
Leslie Colon,
Present.
Rosa Diaz, Jennifer Meyer, Nelson Rama, Beverly Pabon,
Present.
Xavier Santiago, Jason Villanueva, Candy Vives Vasquez.
Present.
You have quorum.
Top tonight's agenda. And scared to say this, but do we have any announcements? Do we have any announcements?
I do have a.
Okay, I figured. Go ahead, Rosa.
So this Friday at the East Harlem Community Partnership at 6 p.m. we're inviting everyone that has any interest with the parks. We are discussing White Park in 106 and between Third and Lexington. Everyone is welcome to provide input. We are part of the Sparks Champions, and it's gonna start at 3 p.m. It's called a community partnership, 71 East, 111 second floor. Thank you.
Thank you. Xavier, you had an announcement?
Yes, where CB11 will have its job fair May 8th. We host Stratford Union Settlement. We have some of our partners, we have special MTA, Mount Sinai, Timberline, Terrace, and others. So look out for the flyers.
Where's the location,
The
time?
new settlement is going to be on 104th.
Just for the record.
Yeah.
What time?
12.
Thank you. All right. So we're gonna start with our presentations. And we will begin with Urban Planning Studio working with Cedars House on research related to phase 2 of the Second Avenue Subway extension. David Martin, Columbia University. All right, please, everyone is with you.
Yeah, so this is my team here. Well, it's a small portion of our team. We have 12 members. This is the representatives that came tonight. And yeah,
Don't break
we're
our
happy to
TV,
start.
okay? We don't wanna go you. We don't wanna go you, but we will. We are Columbia University.
They have
95-inch will look real nice there.
Hold on, I'm gonna get your presentation up on one side.
Pressure, St. John's.
TVs used to be so expensive now. Right?
Well, first of all, good evening, everyone. Thank you for allowing us to present our Urban Planning Studio project that is examining the Second Avenue Subway extension and its effect on East Harlem. We're really grateful for this opportunity and want to take this time to present the work that we've done so far, receive feedback on this first phase of our work, and suggestions on where we could take this work the rest of the semester. So we've only spent a semester, or actually half of a semester, researching this topic and are by no means experts on this project. As residents of this community and as members of this community board, please let us know what we've missed and what we should think about going forward. Next. So here's a roadmap to our time together. We've condensed materials from our midterm presentation, and we'll go through first the historical context and the current conditions of East Harlem before outlining concerns and opportunities that came up in our research that inspired us to conduct a zoning analysis to better understand how the development opportunities presented by the phase 2 extension can serve community priorities. So our team is composed of 12 planners from interdisciplinary backgrounds, as I said before. These are 4 of our members right here. So we self-organize into teams focusing on the community, policy and regulation, and physical planning. So our 2 studio instructors or professors are Anthony Borelli, who's the former director of the Manhattan Borough President's Planning Office and formerly the district manager at Community Board 4, and then Calvin Brown, who's a deputy commissioner at the city's Department of Small Business Services and a former senior planner at the Department of City Planning. Thank you. So the studio was pitched to us as a chance to kind of explore this massive infrastructure project and its impacts on East Harlem more broadly, decades into the future. So our professors framed it as an opportunity for us to analyze the existing site conditions, understand the zoning and the policy context, balance competing stakeholder needs, all culminating in the development of implementation strategies for community-based planning interventions. So our studio is coming into this project at a very critical juncture with MTA beginning work on the phase 2 extension with a different approach to site development than they took in phase 1 and in a different neighborhood context. So we asked ourselves as planners, how can our studio provide planning information to empower the diverse and vibrant community of El Barrio such that an infrastructure project may also expand opportunities for creating public benefits? Next slide, please. So we collaborated with Civitas, so some of our numbers are here today, which is a not-for-profit organization committed to improving the quality of neighborhood life on the Upper East Side and East Harlem. During the planning process for the phase 1 expansion, they provided valuable insights to aid the MTA in considering the impacts of this construction. In our initial meeting, they also raised some short-term concerns about construction impacts on local businesses and along with long-term priorities, including permanently affordable family-sized housing and contextual mixed-use development. So within the scope of this presentation, we hope to clarify the legal context and the public process of acquisition, to illustrate our understanding of the public good, to identify MTA interests, to synthesize community needs, and to present the constraints and opportunities enabled by land use regulations on this project. And I know we don't have that much time. It's a very ambitious agenda, so let's go. Next, please. So locating our site, we're focusing obviously on East Harlem, which is a culturally rich neighborhood located in Upper Manhattan, as all of you very well know. This neighborhood is represented by this wonderful community board 11, which is bordered by East 96th Street to the south, 5th Avenue to the west, and the East River and Harlem River to the east. So East Harlem has a very rich history of immigration, from being an enclave of Italian, Jewish, Irish, and German immigrants in the late 1800s to the Spanish Harlem that we know today. Almost 100 years ago, a subway line along 2nd Avenue through East Harlem was first proposed by IND and approved by the New York City Board of Transportation. Today, we're finally seeing this long overdue promise begin to take shape. So East Harlem El Barrio is a neighborhood with a very vibrant past whose culture had a profound impact on New York City and the world at large. During our many site visits throughout the neighborhood, we felt that history in the murals, music, and the strong sense of pride that still defines the neighborhood to this day. And just like the generations before them, residents continue to make their voices heard in shaping the future of El Barrio. We'd like to now provide a very quick overview of the 2nd Avenue subway, starting with phase 1 and its current status of the phase 2 extension. So this massive infrastructure project, which is receiving $7.7 billion in investment backed partially by the federal government, will bring the Q line to East Harlem. So phase 1 of the 2nd Avenue subway began construction in 2007 and was completed in 2017, extending the Q line to the Upper East Side with 3 new stations at 72nd, 86th, and 96th. From phase 1, the MTA learned the importance of using larger off-street staging areas to reduce the construction risk and impacts. Not only for phase 2 will they use ancillary facility sites for staging before construction, but they also seek to design those ancillary facilities in their future use as mixed-use structures with ground floor retail to better kind of activate and integrate these structures within the streetscape. So phase 2 will bring 3 new stations at 106th, 116th, and then 125th and Lexington Avenue. Next slide, please. So the MTA, this is kind of where we are right now. I think the MTA team will probably do a much more in-depth job of explaining this than I could. But the MTA has awarded contracts to relocate the existing utilities and to facilitate construction of the future 106th Street station and constructing the structural shells for the 116th and 125th Street stations. Next slide, please. So to build the new station entrances and the ancillary buildings, the MTA must acquire various lots along 2nd Avenue, which is shown here in this map. Each station will have at least 2 entrances and 2 ancillary buildings. So the ancillary buildings for this phase will be larger than those constructed in phase 1, and they'll contain all sorts of infrastructure, including electrical distribution, station cooling equipment and fans, with most of that equipment being at a higher elevation due to updated flood protection design requirements. Next slide, please. Because of the larger building footprints that are required for the phase 2 ancillary facilities, the MTA did anticipate more displacements and complexities in kind of the construction and demolition than in phase 1. To reduce displacement, the MTA has prioritized vacant lots and buildings for acquisition. Next, please. With these acquisitions, demolitions, and construction activities of MTA leading to disruptions along 2nd Ave, their outreach to the surrounding community has been all the more important. This has involved kind of a grassroots approach that includes holding outreach and community meetings with residents, tenants, and organizations, and the Community Outreach Center. Next slide, please. In the acquisition of these sites, the MTA has projected a total of exactly 505 commercial employees and 170 residents from 65 residential units being displaced. Currently, and this was at the time of creating this presentation, which is a month ago at this point, 4 commercial units and 4 residential units have been relocated, with 4 more residential units in process. The acquisition of these lots will either be full or partial taking, depending on the MTA's needs for easement, staging area, and construction space. So the MTA's authority to acquire these properties through eminent domain is rooted in the 5th Amendment, which states that government takings of private property for public use must be justly compensated as well as follow due process. Next. The constitutionality of eminent domain for economic benefit as public use was established in the case Kelo versus the City of New London in 2005. Next slide. And the MTA takings must also follow the New York State's eminent domain procedure law, which lays out the acquisition process and specifies requirements for public notice and hearings, as well as the public authority law, which regulates the disposition of public authority property after the fact. The Uniform Act additionally requires that property owners and people being displaced receive fair and equitable treatment. So to anchor eminent domain in providing public goods, the MTA has outlined 3 key outcomes or justifications. These include enhanced transit service, less crowding on the Lexington line, and reduced automobile dependency and the associated air emissions. This provision of public goods within the transit realm led us kind of to wonder what opportunities exist beyond meeting these infrastructural needs. So, therefore, Art Studio asks, in what material ways can disposal of MTA acquired properties further enhance economic benefit for the public? Next slide, please. The opportunity that we've identified starts with the phase 2 extension's all-encompassing infrastructural footprint, requiring the MTA to acquire a substantial amount of sites along 2nd Avenue. This is happening within the context of a city-wide housing affordability crisis, with the city recently very committed to build more housing in every single borough, as reflected by the City of Yes for Housing Opportunity and revisions to the city charter that fast-track the development of affordable housing. Presenting an opportunity to leverage the disposition of sites acquired through eminent domain to provide public benefits that include more housing for El Barrio, a neighborhood that has a high concentration of rent-burdened homes. The impact of a transportation project of this scope and size will go beyond just expanding transit accessibility in East Harlem. The 2nd Avenue subway will affect various forms of the neighborhood, shaping its residents' daily livelihoods, from how residents get to work, to how families shop, and to how they take their children to play. As a studio, we believe that the redevelopment of these MTA acquired properties can serve both infrastructural needs and community needs. Accordingly, our objective is to channel this development potential of acquisition sites to expand opportunities for public benefits holistically, building upon the higher residential density enabled by the East Harlem rezoning and leveraging these large site footprints to catalyze equitable neighborhood development. Currently, we're wrapping up our initial understanding phase. For context, we had about 6 or 7 weeks to start the project, to put this together, and now we're here presenting. And then we'll be kind of moving on to the next phase of coming up with some recommendations or considerations for this project moving forward. In the following sections, we'll go into our current understanding of the community context, policy and regulation, and of course, the physical planning aspects of the project. We want to first quickly take you through the neighborhood context. So to better understand how phase 2 of the Q line expansion will change residents' lives, it's really crucial to examine what has shaped the built environment of East Harlem up until this point. So we're going all the way back to 1961. So next slide, please. So the 1961 zoning resolution kind of set the stage for the neighborhood's current tower and park typology, which still occupies a significant portion of the neighborhood land use till this day. In 1973, the Special Transit Land Use District was created to coordinate development along Second Avenue with the future subway line. This included regulation relating to the use of sidewalk space during construction. In 2003, parts of East Harlem were rezoned from R7-2 to higher density districts like R8 and R8A to encourage new residential development. This change increased allowable density and signaled the city's intent to stimulate reinvestment in the neighborhood. Next slide, please. The special 125th Street District was established in 2008 to promote economic revitalization along 125th Street while preserving the corridor's cultural and neighborhood character. It introduced tailored zoning rules to balance large-scale development with contextual design. The East Harlem neighborhood rezoning in 2017 upzoned major corridors to allow some of the highest residential densities in the area's history. It also created the Special East Harlem Corridors District to guide this growth along key avenues while very crucially, tying development to affordable housing requirements. Next slide. In 2025, the zoning for specific MTA acquired lots around 125th Street and Lexington Avenue was changed from C4-4D to C6-11, raising the FER or floor area ratio to 15. This is higher than it has ever been before in the neighborhood and allows for substantially greater density and commercial intensity. This rezoning aligns with transit-oriented development goals around the Metro North and the subway hub, kind of reinforcing 125th Street as a major regional center. By tracing this trajectory of East Harlem zoning history, we see both sentiments of anticipation for transit-oriented residential development and consideration for preserving the existing built form while balancing economic development. Moving on to the existing land use of East Harlem, as you can see in this map, the neighborhood is characterized by a great mix of residential, commercial, and institutional use. Next slide, please. This is especially evident in the station or the future station area's 5-minute walk shed, where some of the most mixed-use parts are situated. This suggests the new stations will be serving a diverse group of both residents and workers. And to talk a little bit more about the community, I'm going to pass it to my colleague, Charlie.
Thank you, David. So next slide. Just with these current conditions of East Harlem in mind, we move on to considering the voices of various actors involved in the Second Avenue subway extension. Next. So East Harlem community members have expressed a number of concerns related to the extension. In the short term, residents and businesses are being displaced or relocated, and the streetscape is being altered for construction. In the long term, community members are worried about neighborhood change, the affordability of housing, and the design of MTA facilities. Next. And so the media is paying attention to this project. Local newspapers have highlighted the effects of the MTA's takings on both property owners and residential and commercial tenants. Property owners and the MTA are tangled up in courts, while tenants are informed that they have to vacate their apartments and business spaces. Next. In this quote from a recent Gothamist article that profiled a longtime East Harlem family evicted from the blue building, it'll reappear, blue building right there in the middle. It mentions that the process was confusing and disorienting for the Spanish-speaking family, who felt that they were not provided adequate information or any viable alternatives for relocation. All right, next. So Cheek Diop, a commercial tenant in a building set to be acquired for the 116th Street site and owner of the Tuba African store, also reports confusion arising from the property acquisition process. The MTA showed him several alternative spaces for a store, but then the communication ceased. And Luke Nikaj, sorry, next slide. He's the owner of a tile shop on 2nd Avenue, whose supply lot was acquired by the MTA, and he wonders what will happen to East Harlem after the 2nd Avenue subway extension. Next. Community questions and comments published by the MTA in the summer of 2025 highlight several key themes. Residents asked about the possibility of housing on the sites, whether the sites would include retail space, whether the stations would include artwork, and stated that they predict that the project would accelerate gentrification along the route. Next. Several crucial planning studies and needs statements over the past decade have analyzed East Harlem and articulated its needs and the corresponding opportunities to meet those needs. Next. The 2016 East Harlem Neighborhood Plan was sponsored by then City Council Speaker and local representative Melissa Mark Viverito, this community board, CB11, Community Voices Heard, and the Manhattan Borough President. The plan was initiated to proactively shape East Harlem rezoning plans proposed by the de Blasio administration. The resulting plan emphasized protecting existing residents' affordable housing and supporting local businesses. Furthermore, the plan advocated for developing public land and centering benefits to the existing community. Next. And in 2023, East Harlem was awarded a $10 million grant from New York State's Downtown Revitalization Initiative. And this program aimed to transform the area into a vibrant uptown-downtown hub with an eye towards the extension of the 2nd Avenue subway. The resulting report focused on strengthening mobility, commerce, and culture through targeted public realm investments and support for locally rooted economic activity. Next. The most recent community needs statement from this community board says it all. Quoting from the report, for many years in a row, affordable housing and homelessness has been the top issue for the East Harlem community. Many residents feel vulnerable about their ability to remain in East Harlem as the neighborhood experiences rapid change. Next. So considering the concerns and needs of East Harlem residents and the added layer of disruption posed by the Phase 2 extension, we ask, how can we leverage the development potential generated by the project to maximize community benefits? Next. And so we centered around a zoning analysis as the best method to tackle this question, seeking to understand our site's development constraints and visually communicate their existing context and the potential of future development to deliver on various community priorities. Next. And so we asked ourselves, considering the concerns and needs of East Harlem, how can we leverage development potential to balance community benefits and MTA needs? And so here we outline the MTA's development process, which I'm sure, again, many of you are more experts on that than us. But we outline how from acquisition to joint development or disposition of their sites. And the MTA is anticipating that most of the ancillary and entrance buildings will go through the joint development process, such that the MTA will maintain ownership and negotiate a ground lease to the developer. Staging areas, however, will be disposed of after construction is completed. Next. And so here we show the MTA's various acquisition sites, with ancillary facilities marked in yellow and entrances marked in blue. We chose to focus our analysis, next slide. We chose to focus our analysis on these two sites, where we identified distinct development opportunities for each property to introduce multiple uses benefiting the community. Next. So the first of these sites was the 106th Street Station Ancillary Facility, which is located on the corner of 109th Street and 2nd Avenue and will contain a ventilation plant. This site comprises 6 lots, one of which previously contained a grocery store. We chose to analyze the site because of the potential to bring back a grocery store to this area while capitalizing on fresh district zoning bonuses to provide extra affordable housing. Next. So currently the site has a low density profile. Just note the larger buildings off the corner of this lot. And here, next slide. Here we identified the 6 lots as currently hosting mixed use properties with street level retail and apartments above. There are a combined total of 28 residential units, but few are currently occupied. So considering the zoning, the site exists within an R9A residential district, a C2-5 commercial overlay, the East Harlem Special District, and the Special Transit Land Use District, which, when combined, allow for a high-density mixed-use building with ground floor retail. We considered the combined site's large total lot coverage, maximum height, and FAR, by which the site could be developed given the overlapping zoning, which allows for a max FAR of 8.5 and a max height of 410 feet. And so this demonstrates that while the largest building on the site only has a 3.16 FAR, next slide, the site's zoning conditions allow for a much higher density. Next. Especially when considering that the ancillary portion of the ventilation plant would be exempt from FAR calculations and that any development could receive a zoning floor bonus for including a grocery store. This massing maximizes total floor area, fitting a large number of mixed income residential units and ground floor retail, accompanying the ancillary facility. And one thing to note is that the MTA has not yet defined the exact sizes of their ancillary facilities, and that this massing here is purely for illustrative purposes, showing what could be built given all the zoning regulations. Next slide. And so now we turn to 116th Street. It's our second site that we chose to analyze. And we chose to analyze specifically entrance 2, consisting of 4 lots located on the corner of 118th Street and 2nd Avenue. We chose to analyze this site in conjunction with the ancillary site to explore the distinct development potentials of different facility types. And because of the different zoning provisions that apply to this site, including a possible zoning floor area bonus through zoning for accessibility. And so taking a closer look at the site, we observe lower density vacant lots. Next. The current uses of this acquisition site include a 3-story mixed residential and commercial property, a church, and a parking lot. There are a total of 5 residential units in the apartment building to the left. So this entrance site falls into the same zoning designations as 106th Street ventilation plan, similarly allowing for high density residential and additional bonuses. Although this site has a smaller footprint than 106th Street's ventilation plan, as an entrance, the MTA can take advantage of the zoning for accessibility provisions to work with developers on the site to include either entrances, elevators, or emergency egress in exchange for a residential FAR bonus of up to 20%. Next. And so turning to this aerial view helps contextualize the underbuilt FAR that's currently there on site. Next slide. And the entrance site could take advantage of existing regulations and zoning bonuses allowing for higher density, placing a substantial number of affordable residential units and community facilities within immediate access of the new 116th Street station. But how could we take these sites even further and imagine future development scenarios that could better address the needs of the community and the MTA? The 125th Street rezoning may serve as a model for allowing for higher density that supports additional affordable housing development in an area that is overlaid with mandatory inclusionary housing. The rezoning, which was unanimously approved by this Community Board 11, raised the FAR to a level unseen before in the neighborhood. An MTA proposal would bring a mixed-use residential. It would bring a mixed-use residential development to one of these sites, including 684 units, of which 25% and potentially more would be affordable. And the construction of the National Black Theater on 125th Street, following a rezoning of the current site through the ULURP process, serves as another use case, allowing for higher density. This rezoning upzoned the site from a C4-4A to a C4-7 zoning district, and through the leveraging of zoning bonuses, raised the FAR to 12. It shows us that what higher buildings may look like along 125th Street. And so we see future opportunities in using the MTA disposition, development, and city rezoning processes to increase allowable and built densities on ancillary and entrance sites along the Phase 2 extension. Given the complexity of zoning instruments, we hope to further explore opportunities in our next steps. And so, returning to our charge. For the research that we presented, we want to return to our initial charge and consider some of the pathways that we've outlined for further exploring and communicating opportunities for creating public benefits to meet both infrastructural and community needs on these acquisition sites. So moving forward, we are taking an iterative approach to refine our recommendations for Civitas on the 2nd Avenue subway extension with a focus on 2 key areas. First, we are expanding our zoning analysis across additional sites to test new possibilities that can ultimately lead to development proposals. Simultaneously, we hope to better ground our work in community voices, and we look to you for guidance on who we should be speaking with, which local organizations to engage with, and whether there are any upcoming events where we could listen and potentially join in on a conversation. So let's go back to where we stand now. Through this presentation, we've considered the context in which this project takes place and where Civitas, MTA, and East Harlem's community interests meet, examined the tools at the MTA's disposal, defined our notion of public benefits, and highlighted a great need and opportunity to diversify the housing stock and retail options to make the area more livable for East Harlem residents, workers, and families. So with that in mind, next slide. With that in mind, we've begun collecting ideas for possible recommendations we want to explore as a studio, such as a more refined zoning analysis, digging deeper into financing structures for affordable housing within the context of East Harlem, subsidy programs for local businesses to ensure that they are included in the ancillary sites street level retail, and promoting cultural heritage and facility design, among others. And that brings us to our discussion questions. So we wanted to ask you all what public benefits should be prioritized first for this project, and then what kinds of housing, retail, or community spaces would best serve the residents. And so we've looked at a lot of the past CB11 resolutions, which we noticed that they called for deeply affordable units, commercial storefronts, and community facilities at the 2nd Avenue subway extension sites. And so we want to unpack whether these priorities still apply or have they changed at all. And how willing is Community Board 11 to further upzonings, and under what parameters, location, intensity, specific use, etc. And how has community engagement around this project been so far? Any suggestions on groups to speak with? As I said before, any events that we might be able to join and gather further community feedback? And what are the biggest risks that this project poses? And to you, what does a successful project look like 10 years from now when this is supposed to be complete? And that is it. We'll leave the questions here, but just wanted to say thank you for letting us present.
You. Well done.
Great presentation.
Yeah.
We align on a lot of our needs, and actually that was one of our topics for our next presentation. So in terms of questions, I'm sure that we can get back to you, because as you know, we have quite a lot of still moving forward, and these questions will take a considerable amount of time, and they should have a considerable amount of time, but this task force will be meeting quite regularly, so we can touch base and schedule it so that it fits within, because I know that this is an ongoing project. When is this project?
Our final presentation is May 1st.
May 1st. So then
It's a very short timeline.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
Okay, so we will see if we can answer these questions for you and possibly have you in next month so that we can kind of get more in depth. Right? Then it is very interesting, this community board, to have you doing this kind of project. Do we have any questions? Rosa?
So if you guys can possibly meet with the District 4 schools and the District 5 schools, I'm not 100% sure at the top of my head, how many schools are going to be affected from that until 125th, and out of, I believe like PS 96 is in 120th, and then past 120th is District 5, so you have from both, so Superintendent De La Cruz and Superintendent Sean Davenport, I'm more than willing to connect you. Also, Community Education Council in District 4 holds meeting on the second Wednesday of every single month. If you can also go there, I'll connect you too. And the Manhattan High School President's Council will meet March 30th at 7 p.m. I'm more than glad to go.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Candy and Alyssa?
Are you gonna give us a copy of that presentation?
It's on the website.
Mhm.
It's on our website.
Thank you for your presentation. In one of the slides where you were showing the density in households, I believe you mentioned that fresh supermarket. Is that because that's a recommendation, or is that just something that seems to be standard because we've had other presentations on fresh supermarkets coming in? I don't know about, but I'm just sitting here and from 108 to at least 120th, I found 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 supermarkets. And so right around that area, there are supermarkets available. So I would love to hear any other ideas besides a fresh supermarket as you're thinking about it or as you're having meetings. Just obviously it's nothing written in stone, but you know, there seems to be a conversation that we are food desert, you know, supermarket desert, but we are not as out there as people think we are. Thank you so much.
Yes, I think just to quickly say, so the massings, well, that's a very good suggestion too. The massings, we're not proposing that. This is just to show like what is possibly,
Okay.
like if we were to maximize all of the zoning, that's what it would look like. But we're still in the phase of thinking through, like, would the community even want that much density? Is that something the community and residents want to see? We're just trying to kind of show like what the maximum possible would be. But in 5 weeks, hopefully we'll have some more concrete recommendations.
Just wanted to I'm sorry. And then in terms of this, with all the massing and all the potentials that could be, what additional resources would need to support that, those kinds of, buildings? Because, things don't change that quickly.
Exactly. No, that's a really, really good question. That's something that we did need to dig a bit more into, depending on kind of what the density and what those proposals end up looking like. There's obviously a lot of support, a lot of streetscape changes that would need to be in effect. Then you look at like the schools, or the schools can be overburdened. So there's a lot of like ripple effects that comes out of adding that much density. It's a very good question.
Quiero hacer una pregunta, ¿alguien me puede traducir con él?
Yo.
Oh, perdón. Yo tengo un negocio, un pequeño negocio, y quiero saber quién se ha encargado para ir a los negocios y hablarnos sobre, porque hay una persona, bueno, son dos.
Sí. Primero su nombre y dónde está su negocio.
La 106, el 234 y de la 106.
So her business is 234 East 106th Street. ¿Qué es el negocio?
No, la voy
A flower shop. Oh.
Ok. Hay dos personas que se están haciendo pasar por abogados y nos está pidiendo papeles para poner una demanda y nosotros no le hemos dado nada. Por eso yo estoy aquí. Yo entiendo un poco de inglés.
Vamos a esperar un momentito. Lo que pasa es que esta presentación es de la escuela. La pregunta suya va a ir al grupo número 2, que es la MTA. So vamos a esperar ahorita y regresamos.
Okay, gracias.
So her question is more toward the MTA than this presentation.
Gracias.
Beverly, you had a question?
Yes, I want to piggyback on what Rosa said regarding how this would affect the schools, and also to bind it with how to use the spaces above once everything is done, because we need new schools in that area also. So I would like you guys to have that as part of your investigation or a study on how many schools we can add on new spaces above of the land, because we do need at least 3 schools in the area that we're looking for spaces for.
No,
I'd like
absolutely.
to see that in the presentation too.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Hi, I'm Leslie Colon. With the schooling, can there also be recreational centers incorporated with any establishment that you are gonna be building?
Potentially, I think.
Particularly for elderly?
No, if you're gonna put a school, you know.
Yeah, so we're looking, I mean, a lot of what we focused on for the first phase was kind of the housing, but we really are looking, and this is comments that we got on our midterm presentation too, like what benefits besides housing? Like what does the community need? What does the community want? Is what could they see incorporated besides housing?
I have a recommendation for you as well. So these 2 sites are very important, but the site on 120th Street, 119, 120th, they're gonna have a big spot. So that's where the road is gonna go down through.
Yeah.
And eventually they'll figure a way to cover that. We'll cover that, but it will be a sizable piece of property that you should kind of be incorporating.
Yes.
No, just I was going to say on top of the housing, we were also looking for recommendations on what kinds of housing, mixed income, what levels, AMI bracket, would best serve the community instead of just affordable housing, planting it on.
So we have, so we'll be in touch. We have a lot of different committees in touch with that. We'll put you in touch with the housing committee. We have a lot of this information already set. So we'll be happy to engage in that.
Thank you.
All right, thank you so much.
Thanks so much. Being here.
Moving on with our agenda. We'll now have an update from the MTA. Donald is here, MTA Construction Development. We're going to be speaking about phase 2 of the second Avenue subdivision. Joe, it's your show.
You want me to do it there, here?
Wherever you feel more comfortable. Got this nice,
Small room. I don't wanna touch the TV though, cause then you say I own it.
you get a lot of checks around the neighborhood, we won't mind it.
So thanks for having us here tonight. My name's Joe O'Donnell. Like most of the community board, if not all the community board already knows me from past presentations. I am the Director of Strategic Initiatives for MTA Construction and Development. We are the arm of the MTA that builds the capital projects and the expansion projects for the MTA. I was part of phase 1 of the Second Avenue Subway project. and I am part of Second Avenue Subway Phase 2 and several other projects for the MTA. Around the room here, I think we probably have half the room occupied with our community outreach team. Not only our community outreach representatives from Contract 1, hi Michelle, Alejandra for Contract 2. You all know Hector from the El Barrio to begin with, but he is leading up our community outreach efforts here in East Harlem. We're also joined by several members of the team in the audience, but also online, we have a couple of our project executives as well as some more of our outreach team. So pretty robust attendance tonight. Hopefully we can address most, if not all, of your questions tonight. Next slide. So basically tonight's agenda, we're going to go over a bit of an overview, level set where we are with the project. For those of you who may not know, Columbia did a very fine job already of sort of level setting where we are. So I don't want to take up too much time repeating some of their baselining efforts, but also a little bit about where we are in the overall health of the project. I know we had an elected official briefing yesterday, and some of the community board 11 members participated in that briefing. So some of this will be redundant. But for the rest of you in the room, we'll get everybody on the same page so we're speaking the same language. We'll talk about some of the major upcoming work on Contract 1, major upcoming work on Contract 2 now that it's been awarded and ramping up. I know there was a concern and a question about some of the ancillary buildings and the uses for those beyond the power, communications, and signals that they're intended to be utilized for. And then obviously community engagement and questions. Next. So again, just the levels. Ooh, where we go? I thought I stepped on a cord. So where we are. So the yellow box there shows you the 106th Street station area. That is Contract 1. That was awarded and got underway in 2024. That's the primary objective of that contract is the utility relocation along Second Avenue and some of the feeder streets. One of the lessons that we learned from Phase 1 of this project was most of the schedule delays, a lot of the complications and some of the financial implications of those delays resulted in the curveballs that we found once we got in to start excavating and doing the work. So we got in early and clearing all of the utilities out of the way of Second Avenue, putting them off to the periphery, so that when eventually Contract 3 gets awarded, and that is going to come down and build the tunnels and the stations for 106th Street, that is already out of their way and they know what they're dealing with when they get there. Additional to that utility work, there's also building stabilization and the monitoring program that Contract 1 is implementing. That contract, as I mentioned, was awarded in 2024 and it's anticipated to wrap up in 2027. Over the course of 2026, you'll see a lot of the work zones in that 106th Street station area being reduced as work gets completed there. But then eventually Contract 3 is going to come in and take up much, if not more, of the same footprint because for those of you who are in the area for Phase 1 of the project, the 106th Street station area is going to be constructed, the tunnels are going to be constructed much like the 96th Street station area for Phase 1. Because of the geology there and the elevations of where the tunnels need to be based on connecting to the existing Phase 1 and then the existing 1970s era tunnels, it has to be done cut and cover. It's not deep enough, and the geology is such that it's soft earth and sand, and it's not conducive to mining. So we have to dig from the top down. Contract 2, as you see, what you'll see in blue, that's the 116th Street station area primarily. The function of this particular contract or the objectives of this contract is to launch the tunnel boring machine. Jose mentioned we have a lot that we acquired at 120th Street south to almost 119th Street and west on 120th Street to the PS 96 school there. We are taking down a building, which I'll get to in a little bit, a vacant building that's there now. And we're eventually going to use that site for the launch box for our tunnel boring machines, because we're going to be doing this with 2 machines, which will be launched staggered from that location. They'll eventually run north to about 123rd Street before starting to turn west. You know, these things are huge. They're not like a car, not even like a truck or even a train. They need to have space in order to navigate and make their turns. So at about 123rd Street, approximate to Wagner Houses, it'll start to bow out a little bit to the east before eventually turning west and connecting with 125th Street, and then mining all the way to west of Malcolm X Boulevard for our tail tracks and the tail track ancillary facility. Along with the tunnel boring operations in Contract 2, they're also going to be retrofitting the existing 116th Street tunnel, which some of you have visited. Those tunnels were built in the 1970s in a prior iteration of this project. The city ran out of money and had to close those tunnels up, but as some of you saw already, those tunnels are in great shape and they're a great starter hole for us. It's going to minimize the excavation and the property acquisition that needs to be done to effectuate the transition of that existing infrastructure into the future 116th Street station. Next slide. So as I mentioned, contract one already awarded in 2024 to CAC Industries. That is ongoing. Contract two was awarded in August of 2025 to C Plus Partners, and that is currently ongoing. You may have seen in the news, and we mentioned at our committee, MTA Capital Project Committee on Monday, that we are ready to award contract three, which would be the contract that builds out the tunnels and the stations for the 106th Street station area. We are currently waiting on confidence from the federal government. There's been some conversation with the federal government about the funding for the project and to make sure that we are still going to receive the funding that we were promised in order to move forward with that contract. We do have confidence that things will get worked out and we'll be able to move forward with that contract while we continue to advance contracts 1 and 2. But to safeguard our investment and the future of this project, we have filed an injunction in federal court, to make sure that we get our money. And then eventually contract 4 will come in and do all of the fitting out of the stations and the testing and commissioning to get us up for revenue service. We project a revenue service date of 2032, which is less than 10 years away. I heard you say 10 years, but hopefully less than 10 years away. Next slide, please. So the limits for contract 1 right now are 104th Street to about 112th, just south of 112th Street. As I mentioned, that's for the utility relocation in contract 1. Also, monitoring equipment both for air, vibration, and noise. We're doing some building remediation. There are several buildings along the project alignment that we are not necessarily acquiring, but through investigation and communication with some of the business owners and building owners there, we've identified these buildings as, they're 100-year-old buildings on rubble foundations. They may not react well to our construction, which is going to be considerate in the area. So we're going to go in on the MTA's dime, no additional expense to the owners, and stabilize those buildings. There's the utility relocation, which is the primary objective of C1. Obviously, my friends over at Franklin Plaza, speaking to you, Leslie Cologne, there is a whole host of MPT, or Management of Protection and Traffic, which are those Jersey barriers and fences. We're pretty much inundating Franklin Plaza right now on three of the 4 sides of their properties between First Avenue and Third Avenue, with all the utility work going on there. And then there's the remediation of any environmental and hazardous materials, some asbestos and lead. Next slide. So contract 1 update. Next. So here's some of the work that's going on at present. Over at 105th Street, we're working on the gas main there in front of East Harlem Tutorial School, working very collaboratively and collectively with the school. We've done a bunch of presentations to the school as well as the PTA there. We also work with the school to host our construction advisory committee meetings, which we hold quarterly. We hold separate and distinct construction advisory committee meetings. Another lesson learned from phase 1 is that the residential and the retail communities have very distinct needs and complications based on the construction. So in order to dedicate our focus to those distinct needs, we have separate and distinct meetings where we give them updates. We give the community updates on what's going on with the project, and they have a direct line of communication to us and the project executives, so that you can hear their concerns and, if possible, effectuate real change. In the upper right-hand quadrant, you see some of the electrical conduit work on 2nd Avenue proper. Lower right-hand side, that's for sewer pipe in front of the rear end, or the north end, if you will, of Franklin Plaza Associates, just prior to the Tito Puente Educational Complex. It's around 108th Street. And then on the lower left-hand side, that's Con Edison vaults going in at 106th. We replaced the Con Edison vaults both at 106th and 108th Streets. So Con Edison is busy now reintegrating their utilities into those vaults. We do work collaboratively with our agency partners, Con Edison, DOT, DEP, Verizon, to make sure that while we're there, Once we have the street open, we're taking care of what we need to. We are upgrading all of these utilities while we're there. We're not just moving the existing utilities to the side. We're upgrading them in most instances to extend the useful life of those utilities, so that when we leave, there will be a much better utility infrastructure than when we arrived. Next slide. So some of the upcoming work for 2026, there's going to be that building underpinning and strengthening work. We anticipate completing that around 2026. Obviously, a lot of that is contingent upon access to these buildings and coordination with the owners. Michelle's been hard at work. Speaking with a lot of these business owners, I think you got to or property owners 8 out of the 9, was it? That no, 9 out of 9 today. Look at that progress. So that's going to be ongoing till October. Again, this is on the MTA's dime in order to make sure that these buildings can withstand the construction in and around them. The utility relocations, which is the harder contract ones going on both sides of Second Avenue, largely gas and electrical work. That's anticipated to be Q4 at the end of this year. Sewer work on the west side of Second Avenue at 2nd and 105th. We expect that to be completed later in Q2. In Q2, we're just about into Q2, so not just later just yet. And then we'll be following that up with trunk main, lower trunk main installation in the same area. That'll start in Q3 and then be completed in Q4. I have to remember, because we do have from phase 1 there's sort of a cross section of what the street looks like and how all the utilities stack up there. So I'll have to incorporate that into this from a visual standpoint. I liken it to a lasagna. If anybody else in here cooks, I cook. So we're in there. So we're doing, the bottom layer of the lasagna in terms of the electrical. We're covering up. Then we do the gas. We cover up. So we're making our utility lasagna here, going through the realm of utilities that we need to replace: water, electric, gas, steam, Verizon. So we're also going to be installing the water main crossing 2nd Avenue at 110th. That's ongoing. Expect to complete that in early Q2. And then the oil static line, that's at 109th Street, the intersection of 2nd Avenue. We're still working on that with estimated completion in Q3 of this year. Next slide. So on to contract 2 and what's going to be going on with contract 2. As I mentioned, contract 2 is largely for the tunnel boring operations and the retrofitting of the 116th Street station. You can see the footprint of the contract 2 footprint here. So you'll see the mixed tunneling in the tan. That's going to go from 120th Street north and then eventually west, and then the existing tunnel rehab in the lighter blue sections down here around 116th Street. Next slide. Some of the work that's currently going on is there's a lot of geotechnical work, despite our coordination with our agency partners. A lot of the blueprints and the as-built drawings that we get from our agency partners, sometimes they're 100 years old and they haven't necessarily been updated recently. So in order to make sure that we're not negatively impacting utilities, running into any curveballs, or potentially putting ourselves, our workers at any risk, we go in and we do a lot of geotechnical work, test pits and boring samples. Not only does this allow us to confirm the geological conditions that are underneath where we're about to be working, but also in those areas where we're doing test pits. Those are usually 8 or 10 foot by 10 foot hand dug test pits to confirm the drawings that we have, to make sure that we know what we're getting into there. There's C-Camp pile work going on at 125th Street, both at 125th and Lex and 125th and Park. We have acquired those lots. And again, similarly to the adverse soil conditions at 106th Street, where you have to dig from above in order to, work down because it's sand. If anybody has ever tried to dig a tunnel or a pit even on a beach, you're always fighting against it. The walls collapse on each other and it caves in. So we put in these C-Camp pile walls to create an artificial wall to hold back the earth while we're digging deeper. So we're going to connect at 125th Street into the existing footprint of the Lex line station, the 456, and then we're actually going to be below the 456 once we, and that's where we'll build our station and our platforms for the new Q service that'll be running into that existing 125th Street station. So that those C-Camp piles are going in now, both at 125th and Lex and 125th and Park. And then you can see an example of a test pit and some more geological work being done in the lower right-hand corner. Next slide. So upcoming work for for the contract 2 work, we're really starting to get into the work that's going to have publicly facing impacts. Despite the size of the machinery that's going on at 125th and Park and 125th and Lex, that's all inside our footprint. There isn't any real negative impacts to the surrounding community there. We are getting into work that's going to be publicly facing and have potential impact. So one of the things we're going to be doing is starting this Friday, some of the preliminary work of setting up the NPT, first with barrels and then eventually with Jersey Barrier, is already underway this week. But starting in effect on Friday evening, we're going to be milling 2nd Avenue, taking up all of the existing striping for the lanes and the crosswalks so that we could put down a new lane configuration and crosswalks from 121st Street down to 115th Street. Because what we're doing is we are shifting all of the traffic from the west side of the street to the east side of the street. The first thing that we did was we took out the bike lane, the parking, and the pedestrian refuge islands on the east side so that we could shift the traffic over to the east side, because we're going to be working and launching that tunnel boring machine from the west side. So we've done all that preparatory work. We're taking out the lines and putting in new lines, striping on the 27th. If all goes well with weather and no curveballs, we anticipate that work being done by the 28th, and there will be new 3-lane configuration. We're reducing 2nd Avenue in that stretch from 120th to 116th, from 3 lanes to 4 lanes, and then it'll switch back to 4 lanes at 115th Street. We're also going to be starting some of the demolition. Not all of the lots that all the areas that we acquired were vacant lots. There were some vacant housing and some occupied housing and businesses on some of the lots that we acquired. One of the vacant lots is at 128th Street, or lot 128 at 120th Street, 246 East 120th. That is a dilapidated, vacant building. Quite frankly, it's a safety hazard at this point. So we want to get it down as quickly as possible. We've been working in earnest in coordination with PS 96. They don't share a wall, but we come within inches of their wall. That building comes within inches of their wall. So there's been a lot of work and collaboration, coordination with the administration and the School Construction Authority, excuse me, on the demolition of that building. In order to safely demolish that building and to ensure that we're not exposing anybody to any dust, any potentially hazardous material that may be incorporated in that building, in the paint or the insulation, we're going to be doing that brick by brick from the top down. Once we get down below the 4th floor, rather, then we'll be able to get in there. It'll be below the window height and the ventilation height of the school building, and we'll be able to take a little bit more aggressive approach with removing the lower portions of that building. I'll get into a whole host of the environmental mitigations that we're doing to ensure safety around that demolition. But again, back to the coordination, one of the key issues for the school is making sure that this demolition doesn't disrupt what they're intended to do there, teach and educate the students. We're coming up on their ELA testing period. Good news is we're going to get going with this work starting on March 30th. So we'll have about 2 weeks or 10 days to, get all of our protection in place and start some of that demolition. Then the schools are off for 10 days or 2 weeks almost. So it's a good time to get this going. And then when they come back, they go right into their ELA testing. So we have agreed with the school that we're not going to do any of that demolition during the ELA testing. So we're going to shift our demolition efforts from that 246 East 120th Street location over to 2nd Avenue, where we have 3 lots that we acquired, 3 parcels, 2325, 2327, and 2329 2nd Avenue. So around April 13th, we anticipate shifting our demolition efforts from proximate to PS 96 over to 2nd Avenue while we're on that 2-week pause next to the school. Those buildings will come down a lot quicker because A, they're not proximate to a school. B, they are in better condition, so our workers can get in there and do all the remediation work that they need to do inside the buildings, take all the guts out of them before we start demolishing them. So we'll have greater confidence as what's in there and be able to tackle that before demolishing it. So that work's going to go a lot faster, despite the fact that it's starting largely, 2 to 3 weeks after the work at 246 120th. We anticipate them both being completed on roughly the same 7-week timeline. Next slide. So here's an example of that timeline. Got a little bit ahead of myself, sorry. So we anticipate this week we are installing a lot of the prep work. Next week we'll be getting going with the roof demo and the debris loadout. So that's going to literally start by taking bricks out by hand from the roof down next week. The third week will be demoing of the 5th floor, and again loading out the debris. No work during the ELA testing the weeks of April 13th and 20th. And then we'll return here the week of April 27th to demo the 4th floor, and then subsequently the 3rd and ground floors. Week 7 will be loading out any of the remaining debris, and then week 8 will be grading the area and demobilizing. Next slide. So this just is, again, visually to give you a sense of what's going on. This green area is that 246 East 120th Street. As you can see, this is PS 96. It abuts PS 96. It's right up against it. So we're going, we're taking considerable precautions to ensure that we don't disrupt school operations. And obviously, given the sensitive receptors there in the form of the students and the children, making sure the environmental mitigations are in place to do that work safely. So we'll start there in the green area for a couple of weeks. And then when we take a pause for the ELA testing, we'll shift over to the yellow area, which are those 3 buildings that front 2nd Avenue, and we'll begin the demolition there. This is that considerable area that Jose was referencing earlier at 120th Street, heading south to 119th, and it'll eventually get even bigger when we take these buildings. But that's the area where we're going to be launching the tunnel boring machines from. Next slide. So again, going into a bit more detail about the protections around the school, one of the first things that we did was we created a 25-foot clearance or buffer zone, so that folks, we keep them at least 25 feet away on all sides, with the exception, obviously, of the school because it's adjacent to it, from the demolition. So we moved the pedestrians off the sidewalk into a protected walkway, surrounded by Jersey barrier in the roadway, and we shifted all the traffic over to the north side. One of the reasons why we want to get this building down is it's a safety hazard for the surrounding community, and it's also, gives us a larger footprint to work in. But what it'll also do is once that building is down, we will have complete control of this whole particular area here. So we'll be able to eventually come down 2nd Avenue, get into our work zone, exit on 119th, and then head out without having to always circumnavigate the school with heavy machinery or large trucks. So the sooner we get that down, the better it is for the surrounding community as well as our flexibility. Next slide. Part of the controlled demo, as I mentioned, is going to be taking the initial floors down by hand. So the site mobilization has started this week. We've implemented that controlled access zone. We're going to start controlled demolition next week. One of the questions that we get, and that we've obviously already had conversations with the school. Could you go back one slide? It shows it a little bit better. So, well, actually, it's the one with the yellow and the green. One more. So we get a lot of questions about what are we doing about the demolition and the containment when the kids are out at school. They're considerably outside at recess. So they're considerably outside the 25-foot containment area and the buffer zone that we've, that are mandated to implement in order to make sure that folks are safe. One of the things about dust and airborne material is they dissipate as they get further from the source. So we have monitoring equipment at the localized area where we're doing the work. So someone in our work crew is going to have monitoring equipment with them or on them so that we're safeguarding our workers. Not only will we have it inside the building and inside the containment area, but we'll also have it outside the containment area. And not only will we have it outside the containment, we'll have it on the school as well. So we have great confidence that we will know that we're having, elevated readings proximate to our workers before it ever gets to the point that there's any elevated readings proximate to the public. It would have to go through 3 tiers of environmental monitoring before it got to the point where there would be a concern for the public. Sorry to make you go back. So now 3 more slides. I think it was up front. One more, I think, yeah. So some of the protection measures for the school, specific to the school, is as we remove those top floors with hand tools, we're going to be applying roof protection to the school. So we are not only putting plywood around the roof itself, but we're also putting 2 layers of plastic around any exhaust at the school to make sure that there is no infiltration of dust or material into the school itself. We are also wrapping the exhaust only. My bad. We need to make sure that the intakes are still open so that the air can get into the school. And then we're also covering the windows. The 3 floors of windows on the 120th Street side and the back side of the building are going to get 2 layers of plastic sheeting to ensure that nothing gets through and into the school. Next slide. This is that lane shift that I talked about. So what we have already started doing is putting up some of the Jersey barriers that you see in yellow, which sort of demarcate where we're going to be doing our work. Obviously, the teal area and green areas where PS 96 and our launch box is. We're also going to be putting up an ancillary down here at 106th Street and an entrance. So there will be shifting of traffic to the east side, consolidating into 3 lanes for 3 blocks before it shifts back towards the west side, still in that 3-lane configuration, till it returns to 4 lanes at 115th Street. Along with those lane shifts, obviously, where we're putting up these MPTs in order to shift the traffic and or protect our work zones, the businesses and the residents there no longer have street frontage to put their garbage out. So we've coordinated with DSNY to identify suitable or alternative garbage location areas, and also coordinated with DSNY so that their workers know where to find that garbage. So the brown areas are indicative of those areas that DSNY has identified as suitable to alternative garbage locations. And we've already been out hard at work. Alejandra and team have been out going door to door to educate folks on this move, as well as what's going to happen with the garbage relocation. Next slide. So some of the signage concerns, I know we get a lot of questions about signage that we do have at present and what we're doing for the future. I know I've spoken to the community board already about some of the signage concerns around contract one.
Joe.
What's that?
You can't prepare.
Well, I mean, we hear it from the local community first, and you guys at the same time. So we're getting it from both ends. One of the things that we did, we are a transportation organization, right? We hear from a lot of folks, and we may hear from a florist. I don't know what we're going to hear about. Someone's going to have to translate for me, but we do hear about business impacts, and unfortunately, we do our best to try to mitigate those construction impacts. There's only so much we can do, right? If we have a budget for a project, it's earmarked, it's taxpayer dollars to build that project. We don't have extra money that we can share or to give to help alleviate some of those business concerns. But what we do try to do is we work with those businesses, to help them with marketing. We'll create signage for the businesses. If we've got one of those MPT areas in front of them that blocks their zone, their frontage from street traffic or pedestrian traffic, we'll work with them to put up signage so that folks know they're there and they're open during construction. Sometimes if we have construction areas that take up an entire block, some folks may be wary. They say, I don't know, there's nothing open down there. It's all construction. We'll put up wayfinding at the beginning and the end of that construction area that'll let folks know, here's the number of businesses that are open on that particular block. We also work with our partners over at Small Business Services in the city to work with some of these folks. Again, I don't want to throw my friends from Small Business Services under the bus either, because they have a finite pool of money, largely grant driven, where they can help out some of these businesses, but they do have a pretty expansive toolbox of how folks can, help them with their marketing plans and things of that nature. So we also do work with the Chamber of Commerce. Candy, we've leaned on you a little bit sometimes too, the 116th Street Business Association, how we could do some things better. In terms of marketing, we did things on phase 1, like we did Small Business Saturdays, where we encouraged people to frequent these businesses on Saturdays in order to, drive business up. So there are a lot of ways we can work. We just don't have a check that we can write out to folks to, help offset some of the impacts to maybe foot traffic and things like that. But the signage is one of them. We had a very, robust and dedicated effort in phase 1 of the project. It came late in the project, so it's sort of what everybody remembers. And one of the things that we're seeing on contract 1 of this particular project, no fault of their own, contract 1 has had some hiccups. The project was paused due to the congestion pricing. There's been some coordination efforts with some of our the access agreements that we've had with some of the buildings. that's caused them to, have to scramble a lot more intensely and quickly than anticipated to make sure that they complete their contract 1 and get out of the way for contract 3. So there's a lot of work going on right there, around the 106th Street Station area that wasn't necessarily anticipated to all be happening at once. So we've engaged with our MTA marketing team and the project executives on the project to take a holistic look at that signage and see how we can do better. Certainly for moving forward, but we're trying to speed that up. We were told that we may have some concepts in approximately 2 weeks to try to do better with the signage for the 106th Street Station area. Because, again, our contractor scrambled to make sure that there was some visibility, but it's simple, at this point. And so we want to try to make it a little bit better. Next one. Some of the questions that we got too are about, and you all from the Columbia team and Civitas team talked a little bit about it, about some of what is going to happen at these ancillary structures. Another lesson learned from phase 1, especially around the ancillaries, is we don't want to create dead space on vibrant corners, right? Especially in a very densely populated area like 2nd Avenue in this area, or an existing commercial corridor at 125th Street. So all of our ancillary structures right now are anticipated to have ground floor retail as part of them. We've talked with the congressman and the community board. We actually went through an entire visioning exercise with a whole bunch of community stakeholders around the 125th and Park area, because our friends at Uptown Grand Central, as the name would indicate, envision a larger, sort of grandiose presence because of the confluence of all of the transit, the subway, the Metro North, the buses at 125th and Park. So some of the feedback we got from that visioning exercise was, again, it confirmed our desire to not create any dead space. But in the 125th Street corridor, we've also talked about incorporating some community space in those ancillary structures too. So still TBD on that. But as you can see, the areas in blue are the ancillary structures. The way this works is there are ancillary structures at the terminuses of the stations. So at 106th Street, because it goes north and south, there will be an ancillary structure at the south end of the station and at the north end of the station. Same configuration for 116. When we get on to 125th Street, there will be ancillaries at the east and west ends of the station. And then there will be a tail track ancillary all the way at the end, just north or west, as the case may be, of Malcolm X Boulevard. These ancillary structures' primary purpose are to provide fans for air intake and exhaust. The old system relied on grates in the sidewalks and the trains acting like a piston as they came through, pushing the old air out through the grates and pulling the new air, fresh air behind it. We do that mechanically now through exhaust fans. They also help us in the event of an emergency situation and a smoke condition to help clear the tunnel or the station for first responders to get in. As I mentioned, there's also signals, power, and communication equipment in those back of the house areas. And then there are also emergency points of egress should they be needed. The ground floors, as I indicated, will have retail. As we go through the slides, you'll see the approximate height right now, projected height of the ancillary structure. So here at 106th Street, the 108th Street, or 109th, it's on the north side of the street. Ancillary will be approximately 273 feet in height, and it'll have ground level retail of approximately 515 square feet. So not huge, but certainly something like a small coffee newsstand, not a Best Buy or anything of that nature. On the southern end of the station, you see there's an ancillary structure on the southwest corner of 106th, our southeast corner. That's 280 feet in height, an expected retail of approximately 306 square feet. Next station.
Next slide.
Yeah, sorry. 116th Street Station. Ancillary 2 is anticipated to 252 feet in height. As our friends from Columbia and Civitas pointed out, these areas are ripe for joint development. We don't know necessarily how high they are going to go or what the joint development will look like. We did contemplate at 125th Street what the 125th Street and Lex location would look like, and Columbia went through those numbers, and we've already presented the community board on that. with some projections for housing above the ancillary there, along with affordable housing, 25% of those numbers being affordable housing, as part of a rezoning effort that was going on there. We had to make those projections based on the rezoning effort, but until we get into further along in the project and actually have conversations with joint developers, we really don't know what, creative minds might have for those structures above their utilization right now to support the subway. So more to come on those conversations as we progress with the project. Next slide, which will also be the next station. 125th Street, because of the size of the ancillary structure, the entrance and ancillary structure at 125th and Lex is going to go from 125th and Lex to 124th and Lex. So because of the size of that ancillary and the combined ancillary entrance structure, we anticipate having 2 ground level retail spaces there. And as you can see, also considerably more square footage for those retail spaces. So something larger could go in there. I heard Nilsa say she does not want more groceries, so we'll contemplate other things. And then at 125th and Park, again, approximately 200 feet height there, and a little bit bigger. The ancillary at 125th and Park is one of the areas that we've had, some conversation with the community board and the congressman about potential community space in that location as well. Next slide. So some conversation on contract 3, just because it's in the news, and it'll be even more probably in the news after tomorrow when our board hopefully approves us to go ahead and award that contract again, contingent upon some more confidence at the federal level. But as you can see, we have a detailed schedule here in terms of the timelines that we anticipate needing to get into these schedules. So as I mentioned, contract 1 already awarded and started in 2024, anticipated completion 2027. In parallel, we got contract 2 going in 2025, and that takes us out to 2029. As soon as contract 1 is out of the 106th Street station area, we're going to be ready to go with contract 3, because that is to build out the 106th Street station area, 106th Street station area, and the tunnel work there. So we really don't want to delay that. We have the design all queued up. We've been through the RFP process with the contractors. We have a contractor identified. That is ready to go. Again, we are seeking approval tomorrow at our MTA board to give us the authorization to award that once we have I'll say yellow light, at least a level of confidence, maybe not a full green light, but at least a level of confidence from the federal government that we're going to be reimbursed for their portion of the project so that we can move forward. And then later in 2027, we anticipate awarding contract 4, which is that system and finishings contracts. We got some time on that one. And again, we have confidence based on, prior court awards. And part of the rationale behind why the federal government was withholding money was making sure that everybody was doing their proper due diligence on the award of these contracts and who these contracts were going to. And we feel that we're in a good place with that. So we think, the federal government will see to do the right thing here. As you can see, there's only 4 contracts associated with this project. Phase 1 had 10 major contracts with many more subcontracts underneath that. Again, the confluence and the interaction between those contracts and one contract waiting for another to finish, so if contract 3, for instance, was delayed, then 4 was delayed by product of the 3 being delayed. So we minimize the number of contracts and the integration between those contracts to hopefully minimize impacts and delays. Next slide. As I mentioned, we're asking our board to allow us to award tomorrow. So we'll be ready to go after tomorrow, contingent upon that approval. Next slide. That contract 3 is a $1.015 billion contract. And again, we just want some confidence around the current uncertainty with the federal government. There's been some lack of focus on awarding the funds needed to advance this project. So we would just want to make sure that everybody's focused on that before we move forward. Next slide. From a community engagement standpoint, we've been out here. We have a brick and mortar location at 69 East 125th Street. We've been here since 2018, years before we put a shovel in the ground. One of the things we learned from, again, phase 1, best practices is we implemented a construction or a community information center there probably about halfway through the project. The one major knock that we got on that community information center was why the heck didn't we do it sooner? So taking the lesson learned from that, we opened up this brick and mortar location. We staffed it with Hector and his team. We've got 5 folks up there, largely made up from this community, 3 of which are bilingual Spanish speakers. We've got a project management team that's got 2 members that are dedicated to community outreach and communications. We've got Michelle and Alejandro, who are representatives of the respective contracts. So we have an abundance of community outreach resources. So if you're not getting some information because you're not on one of our distribution lists, please make sure that you get a hold of us to put you on that distribution list. If you're not hearing from members of our team, please let us know and we'll make sure, because as you can see in this bullet list here, we do pop-up events. We have a branded 2nd Avenue Subway 10, which I think you'll see a picture of in a slide or two, where we go out. One of the things we heard very early on, despite the fact that we put that brick and mortar location there, was East Harlem's not like the Upper East Side. You can't sit in your office and wait for people to come to you. You need to bring the message out to the community. So Hector and his team, they have this pop-up tent that they go out, and what they do is they target areas around the existing 4, 5, 6, because that's where, transit users are, to educate them on what's going to be coming and the options that they have. Also, with the density of schools in this particular area and the density of NYCHA housing in this particular area, we go to a lot of schools and a lot of NYCHA events to educate them as well. We have a whole host of electronic or digital assets that we use. We have notifications, we have monthly newsletters, we have merchant advisories, we have weekly look ahead. So you're going to hear from us on a weekly basis, a monthly basis, a quarterly basis, as much as you want, frankly, to the point where you probably get sick of us. But now that the work is really ramping up and we've got multiple contracts and eventually possibly 3 contracts going at the same time, there's a lot going on, and we're here to be an asset and a resource for you. We obviously come to various Community Board 11 committees as well as Community Board 10, because we're going over to the west side too. And then now the 2nd Avenue Subway Task Force. This task force has met multiple times in the end of 20. I think it kicked off in the end of 24, but certainly over the course of 2025. We were meeting on roughly a quarterly basis, and it may be more frequently as needed based on the level of work and activity that's going on. I mentioned previously those construction advisory committee meetings. Those are for both residential and retail, and those take place on a quarterly basis. Next slide. This is the whole team. This is everybody who, and everybody that you can reach out to. That's our community information center on the right-hand side there. Again, 69 East 125th Street. We have a dedicated project hotline. We have a dedicated project website. We have a dedicated project email. So no shortage of ways to get a hold of us. And you can always reach out to me directly or Hector directly. And if we don't have the answers for you, we're happy to plug you in with who might. So I know I ran through a whole bunch there, and certainly on the heels of Columbia's very detailed presentation, I'm sure there's some questions, but.
Thank you, Joe, for your comprehensive presentation. So I have 3 questions. I have 2, but one just popped in my head. So what happens if federal funding doesn't come? You have all these scaffolding and all this stuff around this.
Right. So contracts 1 and 2 are already awarded and funded.
Okay.
So that's why we're cautiously moving forward with contract 3, and we're waiting for a little bit more confidence that funding is going to be there for contract 3 before we award it. The last thing we want to do is have gone through all of this effort and exercise already and the impacts to the community and have to tuck tail and leave like they did in the 1970s with those 106 street tunnels. The good thing is we don't expect that to happen, because again, part of the reason why there is some hesitation on the federal government side is they want to make sure we're doing our due diligence and doing the right thing here locally. We have confidence that we are. So,
but if it doesn't happen, or if it doesn't happen for a bit of time,
right?
Do you have like a contingency plan should that happen?
So we'll continue with contracts 1 and 2,
okay.
And then if we get to a point where we have to consider, we're reaching, a break point with contract 3, that now all of a sudden we're getting to the point where there's delays. There's been some conversations with the governor, to try to seek additional funding and things like that. So, but those are contingency plans that we're investigating that we hope we never have to utilize, right?
And so then my second question is, in terms of local hiring, You know, I remember that, years ago, we did the, job fair. And my colleague, Xavier Santiago, mentioned this would be another. But in terms of right now, can you give me a sense of if anybody from East Harlem pre the development has been hired during construction and what your visions are for post-construction?
Sure. So the fortunate thing about this project is, and I used to get beat up pretty regularly by Vinny Torres from Community Board 11 and our Positive Workforce folks, because initially on phase one and initially on phase two, we did not have a local hiring component associated with this project. Part of the reason, or the large reason, was because the federal government didn't allow us. The FDA said that we could not geographically restrict our contractors' hiring practices. If we did that, I would jeopardize my federal funding and put us in a position where we maybe find ourselves today. But now, fast forward to 2020, and the Biden administration's Build It Back Better initiative, that put a pilot program in place by the federal government, a local hiring component. So contracts 2, because now we have that pilot program, contracts 2 through 4 will all have local hiring components to them. And what that means is 20% of the New York State local workforce will have to come from, we've got the local catchment area, which is largely Congressman Espaillat, what's it, District 13? Right, so largely from District 13, the zip codes that encompass District 13. And then if we are not being successful enough in meeting those numbers from those zip codes, we can go out to, economically disadvantaged zip codes, farther footprint. We're hopeful that we'll be able to capture, most, if not all, of what we need within the existing footprint. But what those numbers look like so far, because contract 2 is just ramping up, it's very early on. We don't have that much, we were only starting work in earnest. So we have, I want to say 8 people. Alejandro, do you know off the top of your head already hired from the local area? I feel like it's 8. I do get a report from our DDCR, which is our Diversity and Civil Rights team. The contractor reports to them and they report to me. So I do get a printout every month for the prior month. So in March, I got January's numbers because they reported January's numbers, and February is a consolidated report. So it lags by about a month and a half. But I do have those numbers and I could share those with the community board for what we've hired so far. I feel like it's 8 locals and 2 interns. And I feel like, again, using round numbers, I feel like over the course of 2nd Avenue in total for the contracts 2, 3, and 4, I think they're projecting that local workforce hiring the number to be in the neighborhood of about 300 people, 260 to 300 people from the local area.
And then
So I was just going to say, so you are familiar and you referenced some of the job events we've done in the past. Those job events in the past were largely informational. It was trying to make a marriage between the folks in the community who are looking for pathways to middle income jobs and unionized employment and the unions. Now I have actual tangible jobs. I have contract 2, contract 3. They know we're going to be looking for painters, electricians, laborers, whatever it is they're looking for. So we have a job event coming up. It's probably going to be April 24th. We're waffling between the 23rd and 24th because Congressman Espaillat would like to be in attendance, and the 24th is better for him. So I think we might land on the 24th, but that will feature not only our project, who can talk about the jobs that they're going to be looking to hire for contract 2, but also our DDCR folks will be there to talk about businesses and minority-owned and women businesses who can work on this project as well. So not only individual jobs, but contracting opportunities. We'll have our friends from talent acquisition at the MTA. In the past, we've already got interest from NYPD, FDNY, DOB come in and talk about civil service opportunities. And then, of course, we'll have all the unionized folks there to talk about how to get into their apprenticeship programs.
And this is just now, you've built the subway,
Yep.
right? So now this is just post. Is the MTA ever going to restore? I'm not quite sure it was you, but a lot of the sidewalks were cut.
Yeah.
In East Harlem, right? Are you going to make those back to where they were? And because my concern is like on 106th Street, when you have more people getting off.
Yeah.
Like in Franklin Plaza's sidewalk was cut off, the block before that. And so I'm hearing a lot from elderly people who are pushing shopping carts, and there's ruts and stuff like that about real safety concerns.
Yeah, so not only are we going to rebuild it to bet, like, let's say we cut it back, from 10 feet to 5 feet. We have to maintain 7 feet by DOT and ADA accessibility standards, even during our construction. When there's a cutback of the sidewalk to accommodate the shifting in roadway or work, we have to maintain at least 5 feet of width. So if it was a 10-foot sidewalk that we cut back to 5, or a 20-foot sidewalk that we cut back to 8, we're going to restore it back, brand new sidewalk, to its pre-existing condition. And in some instances, like at Franklin Plaza, we're putting an entrance in on the northeast corner of 106th and 2nd in that wide plaza area that's there. Despite the fact that it's already going into a wide plaza area, we're going to add more sidewalk because of the volume of traffic that we anticipate coming and going out of that station. We're going to widen the sidewalk a little bit more than the pre-existing condition. So there will be some of that as well.
Thank you, Joe.
So really quickly, we have other people like panelists on the Zoom if we want to get them up in case they want to answer more technical.
Yeah, so if we have, we do have, can you see the folks in the panelist section? Not the panelists. You did already elevate. Yeah. So yeah, we have Kurt, and Kurt's just for everyone's education, Kurt is the project CEO for contract 2. Mike Fitzpatrick is the contract CEO for Desiree Gazzo is our project management consultant outreach lead. Paul Plunkett is our project management liaison for the contract 1 team. Greg Nyman is from the outreach team over at EHCC, the East Harlem Community Collaborators. And I thought, do we have Dan on too? Dan King is with our contractor for contract 2. So should there be a technical question that we need to get to, we have the resources available.
Thank you, Candy,
I can answer a question as well.
Thanks for your presentation. It's very informational. But I wanted to find out the encapsulation around the school area. So but that surrounding area, how are you can you describe more, like, because you said you're going to be taking it out brick by brick?
Yeah.
But are you going to have that covered while they're doing that?
So there will be plastic sheeting, and then there will be plywood on the lower levels. We cannot encapsulate the entire building. Adam actually asked the question when we had our elected briefing. No, it's fine.
I was gonna ask it again.
It's a great question. So we can't encapsulate the building because to encapsulate the building would require affixing scaffolding to it in order to, contain it. That building, if you sneeze on it right now, is about to fall.
No, I know.
So from a safety standpoint, it would be more risky to the public for us to put scaffolding up around that building and potentially knock it down than for fear of the potential exposure to any hazardous materials as we take it down in a slow and controlled manner. So that's why we've opted not to encapsulate.
So you will have someone, an environmental person, monitoring the environment to make sure that not just only the school, but
right.
you have the other surroundings.
Yeah, so I mentioned earlier, there will be monitoring. Right now, if I'm taking out brick here, knocking down a wall here, there's going to be monitoring local where we're doing the work. There will be monitoring outside the building, outside the containment area that we're working in, because we'll be working in localized containment areas. We just won't be cocooning the whole building. So there will be monitoring inside the work area, outside the work area, and on the school. Again, what happens in these situations, and environmental protocols dictate that as you get further away from the source of the disturbance, whether the dust creation or whatever it is, it dissipates. So the concentration of whatever is being stirred up is lower. So if we don't read it as an alarming level at the local level or at the level outside the building, the level 3 layers away at the school is that much less of a concern. But someone will be dedicated to monitor all 3 of those levels throughout the constant process of the demolition.
Joe, but to that point, the city also said that 9/11 was a safe place to be. And we took the consequences.
Yeah.
Which was quite severe.
Understood.
And we're talking about the way that building is adjacent to it. And the way it's played in the background.
Yep.
There's nothing in between them.
Right. Well, so there again, for the schools itself, for the building, we're going to be covering the windows. We're going to be covering the intake, the exhaust rather, and we're going to be covering the roof to make sure that we're not impacting the school negatively. The kids are not only outside of the immediate 25-foot buffer containment area, the sort of impact area. They're much further away. And I don't know, Dan or Kurt, again, just from a, I am not an engineer. I didn't even play one on TV, so I would defer to the experts if they wanted to add anything more to that.
Kurt.
Can you allow them to unmute?
Yeah, Kurt is available. Dan, yep, Dan can speak.
So Dan, you were unmuted if you wanted to, if there was anything that I missed that you wanted to weigh in on the demolition containment.
While we're fixing that, will the demolition happen while school is taking place?
In session. So it will happen, it's gonna happen the 2 weeks that they're off. It will not happen during the 2 weeks of the ELA testing, but after the ELA testing, there's approximately 4 to 5 weeks of actual school in session where 3 of those weeks will be demo. 1 week will be full of on-site material and 1 week will be regrading of the site when we're done. But so along with the air monitoring that's in place, again, to protect anybody from any hazardous materials or dust concerns, there's also noise and vibration monitoring that's in place to protect the school, to make sure that, we're complying with New York City noise code and we're not negatively impacting the building with any vibration, settlement, or movement. So it's, as important as the air is, the first thought is always the air with regard to the demolition of the building. We want to make sure that we're keeping the structure safe as well too.
So can you guys hear me now?
We have an environmental consultant, a third-party environmental consultant, and then we will have folks dedicated during the demolition on site to monitor in real time.
And I get because yesterday we didn't hear that the encapsulation would require scaffolding. I don't remember hearing that, but with that being the case, this alternative is the absolute safest way this can be done, because I think people are concerned when they're hearing plastic sheeting and plywood. That sounds like something you'd see somebody do who doesn't even have a permit for something. So I don't think that's what you guys are doing, but I think it might help for us to, or not tonight, but to be much more clear about what's happening, because I definitely think people are going to walk away from this table concerned from what they've heard.
Yeah, we can get a more detailed description of that. I don't know if we were able to resolve the tech issues, if Dan or Kurt can
I
weigh
think
in.
it's muted. He said he's trying to talk, but it's not.
Have him try again now.
You're allowed to mute it.
Oh, it's not coming through the speaker. I see some volume
Try
there.
one more time.
No, it's not there. Dan, try again now.
Can you hear me now? Or you
His
can try
mic,
again.
like going up and down as if he's speaking. It's just not
Could
coming
be the
through here.
TV.
It's not on the TV. It's on the laptop.
I understand, but you're sending it through the HDMI, so it's going to come out on the TV.
Joe, just keep singing until I listen.
Don't ask me to dance.
So next time you rap the presentation.
No, I can't. That might hurt you over there.
I was playing, you playing the
No
word.
puns, no puns.
Hey, does the volume on the TV low?
Good ear.
See if you can raise the volume on the TV.
While we're working on that, do I know there were some other questions?
Volume 34.
I guess, yeah, I'll touch on that topic and then I'll pass. I have other questions, but I'll wait. There were muck houses. Is there any I know that there was differing opinions when they've been put up.
Yeah.
Is there any consideration for those being done in certain areas here?
So again, absent the ability to lean on Dan and Kurt, I do know that there are gonna be, like at 119th to 120th and south of 119th, 118th, 117th on the west side, south of the launch box area. What happens is as the tunnel boring machine goes up,
No, I was trying to see if I can do it over here.
so as the tunnel boring machine goes, it grinds, the cutter head grinds the material in front of it and passes it through and out like an inchworm out the back of the mechanical equipment. And then it's gonna get mucked out. So there will be a facility. I don't think it's gonna be a big blue wall, but again, I don't know what it's gonna look like, frankly. We haven't discussed that internally just yet, but these guys would have a better sense of what that's.
Let's ask Dan. Let's see if we can hear him on here.
Can you hear me now?
You sound.
Obviously some echo.
We can hear you, Dan.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you clearly. I think they just have some feedback when you speak.
From the.
Dan, go ahead. We can hear you now.
All right. I don't usually sound like that with the echo. So, a great job here, by the way. Impressive. So the air monitoring, just to get to that, there's multiple levels of sampling that's going on, that they're actively sampling the air while we're performing the work at the spot of work. So where the workers are to protect the workers. But then there's like, I want to say 3 more levels of sampling behind that for the public and everybody around to make sure there's no issues. And those samplers are they're basically vacuums that are actively drawing air and taking tests. And if there's an exceedance, they let us know. Right. So that is our most important defense of any contaminants getting out. So I think it is a extremely robust system for what we're doing here. Somebody asked for
about the
more
muck,
deep.
how are we going to be mucking out once we get the tunnel boring operations and any, mining excavation work going on? Do we anticipate install? I know we're going to have a facility, but do we install muck houses like they did in phase 1? Do you know?
We are actively looking at a muck house system for what we call the Bellmouth, which is the 120th Street site on 2nd Avenue. We haven't fully committed to it, but we're really looking into it because it helps us load out at different times of day without disturbing anyone. You don't see anything, it's just coming out and being loaded out. So basically the slurry coming out the tunnel will be pumped to the surface, piled up after it leaves a plant that presses out the moisture, processes the water, and then we're left with the slurry that we have to load out. That's what would be covered by a muck house and loaded out from there.
Dan, one more follow-up. So if you're getting bad air readings, then what do you guys do?
Stop.
And
all
what?
the work immediately stops.
And
then we have to regroup and figure out what's happening, what's going on. I can't tell you what the plan would be now, but the first plan is stop, and then we have to come up with a new plan.
Yeah, because it's going to be, the new plan would be based on what's not working with the original plan, right? So they have a good plan or a plan that they feel confidence in, and if it is not working, then they have to investigate what's not working and how do you solve for what's not working. So to sort of speculate as to what's not going to work right now is sort of a fool's errand because we don't know that something's not working.
Right, and from our experience with demo, the controlled demo, which is literally one piece at a time, is the most delicate way to take a building down, right? So it just so happens that it's the building right next to a school. I guess what I'm saying is it's a good thing that ended up where that building was, the roof was collapsed and it required a surgical deconstruction versus mechanical using excavators and et cetera.
I was gonna ask that because I thought that the roof is collapsed.
Right, and that's what's because of the instability of the building, that's what's mandating this more, like I said, surgical approach to the demo. It is the slowest, most meticulous way to take the building down. But because of its, unsoundness structurally, we have to be very detailed and careful in how we take it down. Not only for the workers doing the work, but everybody else around.
Thank you, Dan. Leslie, and then we'll keep going.
Okay, let's go back to 106th Street. Prime real estate of the signage was on the like in that I feel like I'm a DJ. The signage is on 2nd Avenue with all the commercial property that's on Franklin Plaza. It's horrible. You can't read it. Some of it is broken.
Could you put it up? We have some
the commercial space there are losing funding, clients, income. And I feel bad because as a Franklin Plaza board, they are putting them in court because they can't afford to pay their rent.
You shouldn't take them to court.
So you're talking about 106 on the northwest corner, those 4 businesses there?
Those 4 businesses there that are covered by all the construction that's going on, and then you have the school buses there from the Tito Puente
Yep.
complex, but. That's over there on 108, so when they turn down 108th Street at night, it's very, very dark. There's nothing there to show where they're walking.
Yeah.
There, when the cars turn, you can't tell if there's a double parked car there, a truck there, construction workers standing with a flag. You know, that's the signage that's there now. Thank God it was a beautiful day today that you could read it. But if you're driving by, you know, either you gotta dodge a construction worker not to hit them to read that sign. It's like, is that where that's at? Is that open? A lot of people have been taught, you know, like slowing down to check what commercial space is open and is it available and accessible.
Leslie, just a quick question on the lighting. You said that 108th Street is dark and not lit, well lit?
Yes.
The work?
Both of Second, yeah,
But going towards First.
right there where they're working at.
As we, in February, we walked the Second Avenue proper from 109th to 106th and then back around on the east side, predominantly on the west side where the management team had the biggest concerns. But we walked with the board rep, legal rep from he didn't show actually, the legal rep from the board, the facilities manager and the contractor. And we did identify an area between 107th and 108th on the west side. There was some power lighting and the contractor had installed a temporary light there to add additional lighting. Unfortunately, that light got stolen, so they had to order a new one and install it. So then that one got stolen, frankly. So over the course of the last month, we got 2 lights stolen. Wait, did you see the new lights? The new lights that Leslie got in her apartment?
You gotta stop taking the light bulb.
But the fact of the matter is, if there's a concern about 108, please let Michelle know and we'll go take a look. We'll bring the light meter out and check.
Okay, so that right there, that's in front of the management office.
Yep.
And it's a hit or miss. I mean, yes, we have the updates being emailed to everybody to access the office. There's an email that just came out, so the 26th and 28th, the 107th Street walkway is gonna be closed. However, if you look carefully, there's like a cinder block or those barricades or whatever.
Jersey barriers here.
That's what they call them, Jersey.
Jersey barriers.
Jersey, you know, should send back to Jersey. No, those Jersey barriers are giving the people a walkway. However, during the day, they close off the 107th Street walkway at the crosswalk. So even though you can't cross through Franklin Plaza, you can't access that walkway either. That's what they're doing. So people with
So
kids,
north and south.
east or west.
Okay.
So when they close it on 107th Street, people that are taking their kids to school, it's like, how do I get at least into the walkway? That's the issue.
So yeah, when we do, and there are intermittent times where we do have to close that because we're trenching right there, so there's no way for folks to get over it because we're there working.
No, but that's past that.
No, but there's a trench right in front of the 107th Street crosswalk and the 107th Street entryway to the admin building. And
Right.
so,
That's past that. I'm talking about that walkway. They closed off that walkway so people cannot walk on the sidewalk
but where's that happening?
on 107.
Right, so at times we have to close. My point is,
Yeah, but the trench is past that.
is further
It's further
East.
west.
trench.
East.
Well, the
It's
walkway,
further-
but the walkway that they should be free to walk in is further west of the work, or east of the work.
East of the work, right, but they close it at that point, and it does it to me all the time. So now people are walking in the middle of the street where there's traffic
Right.
because they can't get through that little
So,
walkway. That's
my point is there are times where they have to close it east and west, so folks would either, if you're on the east side, you'd have to go out to 106th Street first to be able to go north and south, because you can't get out the sidewalk. And similarly, on the west side, you'd have to go out to 106, or even depending on whether you're going, you could go out the Third Avenue side, because there's entry points. So we send those notices, when we're gonna close down that 107th Street passageway, we send notices to Debbie and the whole facilities team, Alex, to make sure that they're getting them out, and Eamon to try to get them out to as many people as possible. We usually send them at least 2 days in advance to let people know, if more if possible, but at bare minimum 2 days. Cause there is the work going on there, so they can't go east and west if we've got the trench, right? We can't have them going further one way or the other.
right, so when you do set it out and, people that are computer savvy do get access to it because we have a concierge.
Yep.
Website for Franklin Plaza residents, but not everybody is
We
accessible.
don't post them there.
And the elderly, you know, they come down to go to their doctor's appointments and they're like, why can't I cross the street? And they start yelling at me. And I was like, wait a minute, I'm like, no, I wanna go this way. And it's frustrating to
No,
them
I
because
get
they're
it.
so used to.
Especially
going
with the
a certain
aging
way.
population there too. of
Right,
course.
the who population?
Aging.
I'm the Asian, I thought you said Asian. No, no.
Well, and I, not for nothing, but I have had to procure a simple Chinese translation for Franklin Plaza,
Oh,
so
yeah.
we do have an Asian population.
So Joe, we posted signs there that indicate that, those areas are subject to closure.
So they are at the ground level where people.
Yes, it's really, and then we also posted them inside the grounds of Franklin Plaza on some light poles. We posted there.
Right.
And then the other signs that we do post are related to like night work or overnight works. For example, when there's gonna be night work, overnight work, you'll see a sign posted that says that work is gonna take place. But they don't, you know, they're not specific. It just says, you know, that the 107th Street walkway is subject to closure.
Right, yes, a general notice,
It doesn't
so
say
it'll
that
give residents a general idea that there might be a time where this would be closed if the pathway. The more detailed notification goes to, as Joe said, Franklin Plaza's property management team. So it's a general idea that yes, we are working here. There is gonna be intermittent closures, but the exact dates are given to the property management for distribution. However, I think it's a website or
We give them
a
an
forum
advice.
or something, yeah.
I mean, it's understandable when in like a project of this size that there's gonna be an inconvenience to the neighborhood overall. But a lot of the points that Leslie brings up and that we've been discussing still stem from like a disappointment in, because as you've spoken, you've learned from phase one. And this signage that we see is not a representation that you've learned from phase one. So I don't know if this signage is something that the MTA is doing directly or it's contracting out, but this is not really acceptable.
So again, that's the thing that the kind of the problem that we found ourselves in was sort of an unenviable situation of the contractor scrambling. It's on the contractor right now. And so the MTA now has taken it upon themselves to try to come up with a more, you know, thoughtful branding campaign, you know, something that's cohesive across the whole alignment. So it's unfair to the contractor. I mean, obviously the contractor could have been more creative.
7 years, how long? You're saying it was a timing issue? He wasn't aware of your timing?
No,
I find that hard to believe.
No, but they only got to the point of needing to put up signs in the last, you know.
But they should have been prepared for that, because you are.
Right, and well, and we are prepared, like, we had a whole bunch of different signs, branding, you know, options for them to choose from.
As a small business owner, like in this scope, weeks and months may seem like a very short amount of period. But for a business owner, that kind of timing can put you out of business.
Absolutely, so I alluded to it in the beginning, we've now put this in the hands of our MTA marketing team, who thinks they're gonna have a plan for us back in approximately 2 weeks. We may not wait that long, because we have some, you know, the EACC team has some concepts already booted up and ready to go. We just need the green light to go ahead and implement those, knowing, you know, from the MTA, just telling us, hey, you know, go ahead, spend the money, do it this way, because we owe it to them, do it, get it done.
Upper East Side had top to bottom, beautiful signage. We also were concerned about the picture of the beauty, you know, we're gonna say beautification. Like your Jersey barriers, is there a way to paint them? Make it seem a little more. You're also making these pedestrian walkways that have uneven, as you said, we have a big elderly community, aging community. If we walk through there with them, and I don't see how someone with a walker or wheelchair could pass through there.
So, what, you know, again.
Because these things are gonna be in place for some time.
Yeah, so what we've done is we have taken folks in certain areas off the sidewalk and relocated them into protected pedestrian walkways in the street. So we sort of inherited whatever those street conditions were when we put the folks into that street. So if, and again, I'm not blaming DOT, but if they had not already previously rescaped the street there, then, you know, I don't know when the last time they did that. So Michelle and the team, the EACC team are constantly walking around trying to find those trip and fall hazards, those pits, and they're putting in patch as much as they can and asphalt as frequently as they can. You know, it's almost on a weekly basis that they go out and patch these areas. So if you guys have specific areas that you know, please send us a picture, let us know, and we'll get the team out there to put some asphalt in.
That'd be great. And in terms of fence wrapping, because this was something, you know,
Right.
they have that green. I mean, you have it in some places scarcely, but not throughout.
Yeah, so part of that MTA branding campaign that they're doing, and let's just say this is a work zone, right? So from this window to this window. We can't put anything on the first 15 feet here and the last 15 feet there because we need to maintain a safe line of sight for people crossing the street or vehiculars to see the pedestrians. So we've got between 15 and 15 feet. We can do whatever we want with that interior fit, whatever, you know, how many square footage that is. So right now MTA is trying to come up with a plan to wrap the entire alignment with a sort of similar theme. We've asked for areas, you know, so we can't do anything for 15 feet. Can we have the next 15 or 20 feet to put community oriented stuff up, business oriented stuff, you know, all that on either side. So along with that MTA branding campaign, we're looking to, you know, retain some square footage so that we can do some more creative stuff with that. You know, we've talked about things with working with some of the local schools on art and poetry campaigns. You know, we can hang that stuff inside our community information center or potentially on these work zones. You know, these things get tagged up pretty frequently and have to be replaced. One of the things that we found is that if we put some artwork up there or some sort of beautification, you know, that creates a sense of pride of ownership in those in that fence wrap and those screens, and they don't get tagged up as frequently. Like you don't see the artwork up around 125th and Lex, you know, that Uptown Grand Central puts around there getting tagged up because there's pride and ownership of that, right? So we're thinking along those lines for some of these concepts for the work zones moving forward in the work areas.
And a little paint for those Jersey barriers.
Yeah.
Okay. Rosa?
That's so funny that you
Where
mentioned
you
the
going?
artwork because a construction worker did take it out and, you know, Carrie had to like call you guys up so they can put it back.
No, that wasn't the case.
Yeah, with regards to the testing.
Yep.
That's my concern. It's not just April. It's also May.
Right.
And that science test, math test, ELA test. And you mentioned that there's an advisory committee that meets quarterly. Like, who is part of that committee?
Leslie Cologne.
From.
No, I'm just saying, I'm just using her as an example because she is on that advisory committee meeting. So what we do is we have a residential and a retail advisory committee meeting, and we reach out to folks. We've worked with our elected official partners to identify folks who have a greater than one-to-one voice. It's a smaller group. It's 10, 15, 20 individuals who can take the MTA's information back to larger audience. So whether it's Franklin Plaza,
No, I'm just saying like one person from here, no one from like 115, 120.
No, from across the entire, from everywhere we're working right now. So from 104 to 120, we'll be invited to these meetings. And again, it's gonna be NYCHA representatives, Franklin Plaza representatives, the 116, Candy, you're invited to those too, aren't you? The 116th Street Business Association. Again, like larger groups that have audiences where they can help us get the word out. It's not just typically, you know, the random person on the street, because we're expecting them to get that message either through these larger meetings, through the elected officials, or through these representatives from the construction advisory committee meeting. Because the problem is you put 50 people in a room, you're gonna get 50 problems and 50 opinions, and we're not gonna get any work done.
Okay. So you also mentioned that you met with the East Harlem Tutorial PTA.
Yep.
Was PS 196, did you also meet with the PTA from that school?
Yeah, we met with 16 PTAs, 16 schools. Everything from Park East High School to East Harlem Tutorial, to Amber
Munoz,
to Munoz Rivera, to Tito Puente, and I'm talking about all the schools. There's 3 schools in Tito Puente.
District 75.
There's 3 schools in Rivera, and Reese School on 110. Our Lady, what is Our Lady? On 112. Carter, also across the street on 112, 113. We went all the way up, including PS 96.
Yeah, I think there's 20 schools along the project alignment.
There's 20 schools along the project alignment, but we did all 16 going all the way up to 125th. So the ones that are on the west side, for example, go on the west side, those are the ones we're doing now.
So does that include BBNS and PS83 and everything?
Well, PS83 is Rivera.
BBMS.
Yeah, it's Rivera.
And
So
was
we
there
did
like
that.
different schools,
Mhm.
wildlife, between second
And
and
we just
third
did,
avenue?
we just did in Tito Puente, we did Esperanza, for a week and a half ago.
Yes,
We did Esperanza a week and a half ago, so what we do is cyclical, so like every 6 months we go in and we give a project update. So we give it 6 months to basically get to everybody, and we start over.
We're going to them.
I just wanna go back to businesses, the ones that are getting displays. Like you guys are buying them out, you're paying them?
yeah, buying the displays?
The stores, the commercial spaces like that are not gonna be there anymore because you're taking over the
Yes,
property.
whatever.
Are there
you're
some
buying,
commercial
the
stores that
properties
are gonna have to be relocated?
So any properties that we acquired, we are relocating the tenants, whether they're residential or retail. So we will move them. We have a relocation consultant, a third-party relocation consultant. It's a federally mandated program that we need to relocate them. We'll move their stuff. We'll help them find suitable space. Not only do, for the retail tenants, there's a whole bunch of things that go into in terms of their fixtures and equipment and things like that needs appraisal, and we need to find suitable space so that they can have it. It's a kitchen, exhaust, and things like that. It's gotta be all that. But for residential components, we work with them as well because, if they're affordable housing, if they're, rent restricted, we try to find them to the similar housing, similar cost structure, similar accommodations in terms of the footprint to accommodate the size of their family. And then we also provide a rent assistance above and beyond. So let's just say they're paying $500 a month, and the only thing we can find them in their category is $700 a month. We're gonna pay the difference for them for a period of time, and it depends on their age and whether they're rent restricted. It could be in perpetuity depending on their age.
Would it be in the same neighborhood for commercial and residential?
Yeah, the first effort is always in the neighborhood. That's where we look first to try to, because if you're a business and you've got a clientele or folks who frequent you on a regular basis, we don't want to move you too far afield and then nobody knows where to find you. So we have O.R. Colin, who is our relocation consultant. And then we have Greystone, who assists them with finding these properties. So that is all going on. And then, I know we heard from some folks, and there was, an article in the paper that was not necessarily accurate, but there's two sides of our story. We do, not only is our communications team bilingual, but our relocation team is bilingual too. So we make every effort to meet people, where they're comfortable in terms of language, to help give them the information on that.
So, but so they're not being given ever in any scenario, like a sum of money when they're being the businesses, not the residents, the commercial business.
I have to double check from commercial, because I do know from a residential standpoint, if we determine we're gonna owe you, 250 grand to move, right? Because that's what the additional monies that we're gonna need to buy you out to move you. We don't give you a check right up front for 250 grand, but if you come to us and say, I don't want to move into another apartment and take your rent subsidy, I want to take that money you give me and I want to move out to the suburbs and buy a house, we'll give them up to 20% of whatever the cost of that house is, so they have it up front to pay as a down payment, so they can move. So I know that program exists for residential. I need to confirm what we do for retail.
Okay, and then I guess what I'm trying to understand is I'd like to know what ones getting relocated are getting, because my concern is, and I obviously want them to get a great deal, but my concern is the ones that are staying because you're not taking their property, and so then they kind of are stuck here. And I mean, I'm gonna be honest with you, like, I'm the one that walked and saw the signs out there. People haven't seen them, but I remember what it looked like below 96th Street. And, it's been, what, 10 years? And how is it not gotten more creative? How's it gotten worse? I mean, I understand that you presented options to the contractor. Why was the option they selected even an option? I mean, I'm assuming there are different prices, and the nicer ones would cost more. And if I'm a contractor, I'm gonna pick the cheapest one you give me, which looks like what they did. And even they don't even secure them. Half the time you go, they're dangling. And then it doesn't, I can't imagine that they can't even give them signs. I would push so far as to say they should be getting some kind of or rental assistance or whatever here. So to hear there's not even money to give them the signs that the other businesses had a decade ago, I'm like very concerned, that's very, and if I were them, I would not be sleeping well at night with the way they've been treated.
Yeah, so the biggest driver in the, I guess, quality or lack of quality of the signage is, as you're indicating, is the fact that of expediency, right? We needed to get it up as quickly as possible so as not to.
But why wasn't it made before? Like, you knew you were coming, this didn't come out of nowhere. So I could understand if they put it up and they didn't secure it great, but the signing quality is crap.
Right.
So you knew you had to make them, no?
So, yeah, we knew we were eventually gonna have to make them, but again, going back to when the contractor is now scrambling to maintain schedule because of the fact that there were some pauses due to congestion pricing and things like that. So they're in a lot more areas today than they thought they were gonna be in today, and quicker than they thought they were gonna be there. So they needed to scramble to get that signage up, as not to have, because there is, again, something to consider, having a cache of signs made up, just ready to go. But until we were there, or until we knew we were about to get there, that hadn't been a consideration previously, but it's something to think about moving forward. We know where we're gonna be, or approximately where we're gonna be and when we're gonna be there. So if there's a business behind that area, then get that signage queued up early.
On a point that Adam brought up, there's never been a case. Do you need legislation for something like business interruption payments? That would be a legislation piece, right? Not for every construction that you do, because that would drive me crazy. But for something of this scale, where you're there a significant amount of time.
Yep.
I just don't see how like a business doesn't, because even if they get the insurance, because there's business interruption insurance, but this insurance company is gonna know that this is coming. Because it's not something you commonly get in terms of coverage.
It came up in phase 1, 2, and it is legislatively driven, tax abatements, things like that. That's all stuff beyond our control. That we'd have to talk to the elected officials about.
Thank you. There.
Sorry, my colleagues here at the table taking my stole my thunder a little bit, so I won't beat a dead horse, but the signage, they are correct. I was over there for lunch on Taskforce, and it's just for, you can go up to the vinyl, it's for quality, what we saw in the phase 1, bringing this drink. So if you could have that conversation, creative, you've heard us, you've heard from them, and come up with a tenable solution you could present back to it, so that would be helpful. I've gone into individual businesses and their foot traffic's decreased. So other ways we can continue to promote that. I'm gonna go back to barriers to reach out to Uptown Grand Central, ways to beautify or improve that. We had a lot of volunteer artists come in to paint, which is why it has stood the test of time. Definitely a good recommendation. It's another way to incorporate the businesses as well. It's like putting their branded logo maybe in front of the Jersey barriers that are going to the 108. An idea for you, along with safety that are necessary. I've been spending an inordinate amount of time in Franklin Plaza, and I've gotten my ear turned up more than once. So here are a couple things that they brought up beyond this safety issues on 107th and just better communication they like from the construction group. The buses though, the bus being moved all the way down, the seniors and not stopped. They're very concerned just traversing to get there to the stop from where.
104th.
Yeah, so a couple things. One, when will they hopefully bring the bus stuff back? When do you hope to, because that was a question that was presented numerous times.
Yeah.
So that's the first question, then I'll go into my others.
Well, in terms of an answer I'd have to get, but I don't think it's gonna be anytime soon, because of the fact that the next contract coming in is gonna be opening up Second Avenue from the west side to the east side in order to dig the tunnel. So what they'll do is they're gonna work on the east side of the street from the east side to the middle of the block, and then move all the traffic on the west side, do their excavation, plate it over, move over to the west. I don't know whether they're going east, west, west, east, but they're gonna have one half of the avenue shut down. So it's not gonna make it real tenable for, adding a bus stop back, but I can check.
Okay, that'd be helpful. At the max, we're looking if everything stays funded 6 years.
Yeah, but I would think before that would be the streetscaping and stuff like that's gonna go back sooner. It would be, right now, we're projecting revenue service in 6 years.
Okay, so we're going back to Nelson's question with worst case scenario with financial collapse of the project or being put on hiatus. If we were to stop, a lot of the residents want to know if you had to say after contract 2, pause. will things be removed? Will barriers, is it gonna turn into the scaffold sitting?
I think we already accepted.
Well,
But like, no, the worst case scenario, because they're proceeding cautiously. I'm saying what happens if it.
Right, so contracts 1 and 2 would finish, and then if we have not by that point, and I believe contract 2 isn't anticipated to be completed until 29. So there's a lot of time, for us to work out the details for 3 and 4 and make sure that they get awarded before that before we would have to pull up everything and leave. But contract 1 would certainly be done. Contract 1's gonna be done next year.
Yep.
And if contract 3 has not been awarded and can't mobilize at that time, then contract 1's gonna go away and no one will be there until contract 3 can come.
So you have to disperse everything,
Right.
break down. Okay, that's fine. That's the question, was it? And last two, which Chamber of Commerce were you saying you were working with here?
We used to work with East Harlem, Henry Calderon and crew, but
They're not
they're not as responsive as.
They're not anymore.
Yeah, they're not really there. Okay, and finally, with the ancillary buildings, that is very important for us, especially those that fall under MIH, which is noted by our
We
Columbia.
hit that already. We're not gonna go around it.
there. I would encourage you to take a look at our
We already
rezoning
hit that.
and when you get closer to find a partner, there are partners that have developed here in this neighborhood, including Sendero Verde.
Yeah.
Which the ribbon was cut on that in 2024, and I'm pretty sure they'd be pleased to engage on another
Well,
project.
as you advance your dialogue with Columbia, and I know their project is wrapping up in like a month, right? So you're gonna have some recommendations and resolutions by that point. We're happy, obviously to bring our TOD folks, transit oriented development folks and real estate folks back to this meeting at some point to have a conversation and at least hear things out.
Okay, thank you, John.
You already went earlier, Beverly?
Yes, I wanna go back regarding the school. My first question is regarding the boring machine. Do you have a date as to when you think you will be installing that machine into the ground?
So right now, the tunnel boring machine is being fabricated overseas. It's anticipated to be delivered to the United States in late 2026 or early 2027. It has to be shipped over here. It's like, 700 feet long, Kurt, is it? Like a full city block long? So.
About 300
it has to
feet.
be reassembled here once it's shipped here. And then it'll probably start operations in late Q1 or Q2 of next year.
Okay, and my next question regarding the school, and y'all doing the demo of 246?
Yeah.
Okay, you said it's a very crazy building and you have to do it piece by piece. In case of an emergency, while y'all working on the building and it collapsed, what evac plans do you have for the school?
So we've worked obviously with our first responders as well as the school, but I don't know, Dan or Kurt, if you want to weigh in on the communication relative to should there be a catastrophe it's outside a brick wall of the school. I don't know that there would be an impact to the school, but obviously folks wouldn't be able to walk that way. They'd have to go and take a different route. But Kurt and Dan, can they hear me? Was it?
They can hear you.
Or can they?
Reason why I'm asking
Because of ground, testing, if that's one of the areas of the ground that's sand, so like if that building fall down, would it affect the whole block regarding the type of material that's underneath it? And so I'm really concerned about it.
That's definitely part of the vibration and geological monitoring that's going on there to.
Do you want
understand.
Kurt to answer?
Yeah, no, I just didn't know if they were.
Yeah, Kurt, do you hear us?
Yeah, can you hear me?
We hear you now, go ahead.
Okay, so we have created an exclusion zone around that building. And so a collapse, I think when you think of a collapse, it will, the building will certainly not topple over as a whole. I think if we talk about a collapse, there might a piece of the wall fall off, or there might a piece of the roof collapse into the building. So that is something that could happen, because especially the roof is severely damaged. That the building structure, the outside shell, so to speak, kind of like topples over, that we do not anticipate. And the reason why we don't anticipate that is because we have a structural report that we read, and the structural report talks extensively about the roof damage, the damage to the interior floors and beams that basically support the floors within the building. But when you look at the building, the outside structure seems to be in, I wouldn't say good, but I would say moderate condition, and a falling over of the building is highly unlikely.
Thank you, Kurt.
There's no plan though.
For the school?
Yeah. It's fine.
I mean, according to what they're saying, right, it's not.
I'll double check.
Now I'm good.
Okay. Her comment, she owns a florist across the street, starts with a C. It's on the south side of 106th Street. It's like a little tiny, but she's been saying that lawyers have been approaching her to sign so that they can sue against the MTA.
Okay.
I don't know who they represent, but I'm sure Hector will get.
Yeah, a lot of times, there are, well, I'm gonna say ambulance chasers.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the only thing.
There's folks who come in and try to ban, and unfortunately, sometimes they get folks together and, I don't want to see somebody pay somebody or get involved in something that it's really just futile, in a lot of instances. Not to suggest that we won't entertain it or hear them out. But I'd rather have a one-on-one conversation and see how we can help her and figure it out before she gets involved in something that
I think
ends up costing her more money,
And I thought I heard you say yesterday about there was a savings that, and compared to phase one that you were.
Oh, yeah, so there's,
15 to 20%, did I hear wrong?
No, you did. In terms of, the way we've repackaged the contracts from 12 contracts to 4, the value engineering that we've done, the minimization of some of the property acquisition, it all has resulted in about a $1 billion savings overall, comparatively speaking, to what it would have cost us if we just replicated the efforts from phase 1.
So none of that is based on quality.
No, not at all.
You're not,
No,
giving us ground
there's-
beef and prime rib and every side.
No, there's you're gonna have brand new station specs and
More better
our-
practices, better
Yeah.
contracts.
It's more sharpening of our pencil. You know what it is too? One of the things that we did, and not to disparage my counterparts over at New York City Transit, but when we built phase 1 for them, they asked for the Taj Mahal in terms of facilities behind back of the house facilities. They didn't need all that. We didn't need to build all that. We're not building all of that for them in the future. So that's where we've cut a lot. So those back of the house facilities that are not needed.
What is back of the house?
Break room, things like that, just like really elaborate locker rooms and space and things like that, that just, they're gonna have space, but it's just not gonna be the Taj Mahal.
We heard there were some flooding issues happening too in some of the basements.
There's been a couple of instances along the 109th to 110th stretch where we're doing work out in the area, and it's largely a byproduct of some of the water we're using to do our work, not directing groundwater or anything like that. There are a couple of issues where we've had to go in and clean up because it's somehow gotten into because again, you're talking rubble walls which is rock and mortar, right? So sometimes the water gets through those cracks. So we have gone in a couple of instances. In a couple of instances, folks have felt like the damage was significant enough that they wanted an insurance investigation. We provided them with claims forms, and our third-party insurance investigator will take a look.
As you're doing these contracts, is there any need to brace any of these buildings? Some of your
Absolutely. That's that building stabilization that I talked about
Right.
in the beginning. So we are, and we have gone up and down the alignment, especially around areas where we're going to be doing major excavation or heavy civil work to identify those buildings that may not react positively to that work, and we're going to stabilize them.
Is there an expense to the owner? No expense to you. Christina.
Yeah, I just thought about something. I'm sorry. I kind of, this is my first time here, so I'm kind of like just feeling my way through this. So, and he said, I was talking about water. So I just kind of had this thought in my head. So years ago we had Hurricane Sandy where everything got flooded, right? So this is a flood zone, right? Is there, are the stations going to be built so that if something like that should ever happen again, the system is protected from that?
Yeah, it's curious too, because I'm not from East Harlem, you might have guessed, and I am not even from Manhattan. But when I was working on phase one, I would come in, because I live in Long Island, I would take the LRR into Penn Station. So I would come uptown, I had this misnomer that I was going up in elevation, going uptown, right? This is actually a low point in the city. 96th Street North is a low point here in Manhattan. And so it is heavily prone to flooding. So not only do we use FEMA's 500-year flood plan to, design these stations, we go above and beyond that. So we go plus. So a lot of the stations are gonna have, the entrances will be built up higher so that they're not prone to the flooding. Those ancillary structures that we talked about, that they're gonna house the fans that bring the air into and out of the system. That grading is a port of entry, right, for the water. So a lot of those, and there's all waterproofing inside the stations and the tunneling. So we take all that into consideration.
Thank you.
I'm gonna circle back to Xavier's comment on the ancillary buildings. Do you have a plan of the height yet? Do you know where you're going?
So in the deck is a projected height of the ancillaries themselves. That is not including any potential overbuild, because we haven't gotten into that level of conversation. We don't know what a developer would do. In some instances, and one in particular, which we've come to this board in the past about, at 125th and Lex, we had to project, a worst case scenario. Best case scenario for the developer, what their max build is, potentially a worst case scenario for the community if they didn't want something that high. So we had to project that as part of the rezoning, but we haven't done that at all of the locations, because it's, again, we need to have a joint developer on board, or a conversation with a joint developer to understand what they're thinking about.
So you still have not chosen anyone that phase contract?
That's too far off. Like we need to be further along for them to understand what they're getting.
Good, because we're always concerned about community space, commercial. I mean, we had this conversation with Angel the other day, even about commercial, sometimes depending on the location. For those locations, commercial is a given. But definitely affordable housing is always on a.
Housing stock's the shortage.
Angel, do you have anything?
What about air rights?
Air rights. It's their building.
That's that joint development opportunity.
Different because of the MTA, right? Or is that what you could build there now?
I think it's based on the current zone.
Is it?
Because they're putting them together, so they're able to
move the air rights?
They're grouping them together, so they have a larger footprint.
I know how to do that, yeah, okay.
What about 120?
All right, 9 o'clock. How's everyone doing? Please, we have a question from and then we'll go to Candy. Sorry.
Okay.
Introduce yourself, please. I know who you are, but.
Hi, my name is Diana. I'm Nagasaban, and I have a business in East Harlem, but I also work with small businesses. And one of the concerns has been that the signage is not enough for them to promote the businesses, and the blocking of the back fronts have been affecting their businesses. So I had spoken with Hector, and he like we wanted to know if there's a way for them to improve the signage that you're using currently, probably to make them better, or probably even to have a design of the business. That way, it will anyone driving by or walking by will see that the business is still open. So I really would love to hear
absolutely.
something positive as soon as possible.
You should make a point of coming, or if you can, obviously, I know you have other responsibilities as well, but you should try to come to our construction advisory committee meeting.
I didn't know there was one until today, and I just asked them to.
Yeah, I thought we talked, didn't you came on the tunnel tour, didn't you? Didn't we speak on the tunnel tour? Where did you and I spoke? Where did we?
She wanted to, the merchant meeting, remember the merchant meeting, when we talked about doing a merchant meeting?
Yeah.
You go to too many meetings, Joe.
The funny thing is, I definitely remember meeting with you, but I,
don't know
where and which name is some of the time.
Diana has a business on West 16, closer to Second.
Yeah,
Not directly.
Talk about that, because not only do you have a business, but you have almost, not a chamber of commerce, but you have a small business. Yeah, I remember you.
My other concern is that, I also work with, a group of delivery workers.
Yep.
And the Second Avenue bike lane is closed.
Yeah.
I know they're supposed to be using the First Avenue lane. But, there has been concerns with that because a lot of people are used to look only south for any bikes coming up or any cars coming up. And they rarely look north to cross the street.
Yeah.
So would there be any way for you to make, more signage for people to know that they need to look both ways?
Sure, we can take a look at that.
Or even to make bike lane small, like on Second Avenue, so that way.
We wouldn't be able to put it on Second Avenue for two reasons. One, because again, we're shifting all the traffic to the other side, so now cars are in the lane that the bikes would otherwise occupy. So there's no safe bike lane for them anymore. And also because of the uneven nature, like I said, we're gonna be cutting up all of Second Avenue from one side, from east to west, and then plating it over. And that's another lesson learned from phase one. We had bicyclists going down and I guess I was gonna say ass over tea kettle, but it's more head over heels, like the bike they would flip, when they go over, like their bike would get stuck in a pothole or an excavation and they would get hurt. So we can't have that. I mean, we can't knowingly put people in that position. So that's why we relocated it to First Avenue.
They are talking about a bike lane on Third Avenue, so I'll talk to Rafael.
Yeah, but they're
They're
adding.
very good. They're
No,
really
we're saying the one going south. But going south, that's the concern because they use the one on First Avenue and everything's going up. So people
It's
are.
two ways. The one on First Avenue is two ways.
No, she's saying though, just people aren't used to it. So.
Yes, the people aren't used to
Yeah.
knowing that bikes are going south now. So we'll be able to put more signage.
Yeah, well,
That would be more visible for people.
I mean, I don't know if we categorize these vehicles as bikes anymore. Just when they're doing 30, 40 miles an hour. What most deliveries, which is a concern that we have in public safety, we can touch that separately. But some of these bikes, quote unquote, are going faster than cars.
Yeah.
And they're like, that almost got hit by one and I was like.
But let me just add something that, one of the problems was that there was no work happening, in the northernmost part of the Second Avenue. And that created a situation where you still had folks using the bike lane. And when they got to 112th Street, it was closed. But now there's work going all the way up to 125th. So you're probably gonna have less of that. Because, then, the bike lane is gonna disappear because of the changes in lanes.
Yeah, but the concern is
Some of
First
them
Avenue.
Well, there's some plans.
The road bike lanes.
Yeah.
For First Avenue, we're gonna approach that in DOT because MTA not responsible for that kind of stuff.
No, but we can take a look and see, I mean, because DOT, we're working with DOT on it. DOT allowed us to modify it. We can work with it, we can figure it out. I have a standing weekly DOT meeting with, I can bring it up too.
That'd be great.
Thank you.
Particularly for signage, and Nelson was just mentioning it, I was telling her we can bring it up on public safety with Rafael. But if you can do so as well, they need to have signage letting people know that there's two-way traffic.
Right, so Joe, on First Avenue, the bike lane goes both ways. And when we cross from Franklin Plaza to 1199, there's no sign on that side of the street saying look both ways.
Right.
So the tendency is if you're on this side and you look this way, you look both ways, but you're not near the bike lane. So you really need to also see that sign across the street so that you remember to look both ways
From
as you're
First Avenue.
crossing. Right.
Yeah, I'll talk with DOT.
Candy, then Asher.
No, I just wanna say that the chamber is working with the bank to see what we can do to work with the residents, the businesses in that area. We just need to have a date set based on the regulation of the bank and, their hours. Because we understand that a lot of the businesses, they fluctuate on when they can be available. So we're working on that, especially with banking hours.
That was,
Banco Popular.
Because they are a designated bank.
Okay.
Asher, go ahead.
Yeah, that's what we was.
Asher, you hear me? Good. You're muted. You're still muted.
All right, sorry, I couldn't unmute before.
Now you can.
Okay, so I wasn't sure if this question was answered earlier, so forgive me. I was going in and out.
Chair of Youth and Education, just so that.
Oh yeah, sorry. Yes, I'm the chair of the Youth and Education Committee. My name is Asher Rodriguez. First of all, excellent presentation. My main question is, I have a couple of concerns actually. With the schools and the whole plastic on the windows thing, many of our kids have asthma. How what's the like, how effective is that gonna be? Like, have you used it in the past? Did you use it on the Upper East Side? Was there any schools in the track of phase one? So that's my first question.
So there were schools in the track of phase one. I don't know that there was any demolition, because we're talking literally inches away from PS 96. So I think this presents a unique circumstance in terms of proximity to the demolition. In terms of the effectiveness, Dan and Kurt, if you guys want to weigh in on, again, because we're not talking, and I think, Adem, sort of went down that sort of path of inquiry as far as we're not talking saran wrap, and this is pretty industrial grade plastic, and so do you guys want to weigh in a bit on the plastic and the plywood?
I think he's talking to you, Dan.
Yeah, I'm kind of getting it broken up here. Can you hear me now?
Yeah. We can hear you.
As far as I know, this is the most delicate way to approach this demolition. And we're taking extreme measures to monitor the environment in the area with real-time feedback as to any issues. So any issues found would be all stop instantaneously. Right? From the environment in the building to the environment directly adjacent to the building to the environment outside of that, like concentric circles around the building of monitoring. That is the intention here. So any exceedances, even the smallest amount, everything stops. And we would go back to the drawing board and reevaluate.
Thank you, Dan. Asher, you had a follow-up question, or was that your main?
I had like two follow-up questions that kind of go together in regards to outreach.
So you have one question. Perfect.
Okay. So have you reached out to the CEC, which is the Community Education Council? And also, have you, with your events that you're putting on with the schools, are they like after school hours so parents could attend, or are they necessarily, are they during the school day? Because I feel like it'll be more effective to do it after school hours, because the parents are really, the adults also are the ones who like need to know that information.
So they're both, they're primarily in the school, because what we do is the objective is to not only educate them on what's going on in the construction, and the impacts of the potential building, but to incorporate, this historic sort of once in a lifetime project that's going on in their own backyards, and incorporate it into the STEM curriculum that's already being advanced inside the classroom. So the majority of it's inside the classroom, but there has been, and Hector, you can speak more to some of the engagement with the parents and the teachers after school, in the evening hours, and after classroom.
Yeah, in terms of the interaction with the schools, we have met with District 4. We have met with the administration of each school. That means the principal, the vice principal, whoever else they want to include. And we have met with the PTAs. We basically, look to the school administration to let us know how they want us to perform the outreach in the school. But in addition to that, there's a program that we have that's called the Student Ambassador Program, where we go into the schools and basically, Fred and I are the lead on that. We go into the schools and we basically try to integrate the construction into the curriculum. Because while the schools are learning about science, technology, engineering, and math, we have to do science, technology, engineering, and math to build this project. So what we're doing is we're creating a learning laboratory out of the construction project. And so far we have had success with 6 schools that have integrated that program. And I know we created, I'm not sure if everybody here saw it, but there's a video that we created about the pilot project that we had at PS 96. For example, it's highly successful, that we did at every grade level. So that means from kindergarten to the 8th grade, they were learning about the second subject. I can give you the link if you see it. And there are a number of other schools that we're approaching. Some of the schools, because after COVID, the testing requirements became a lot harsher. And so they don't have as much time as they did before COVID. So we have limited time with, that they have to, to do this program. So a lot of the schools are telling us that, in September, for example, we'll be able to do that because just the testing requirements are so onerous that they have to spend a tremendous amount of time on it. And what we did, for example, in PX 96, we wouldn't be able to do today. It's just the amount of time that PX 96 spent on that project. But I'll send you guys the link so you can take a look at it. You can see an idea, gives you an idea of how much in depth we go into the school to try to integrate the program.
That'd be great, thank you.
All right, just.
Question
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
And the student ambassador program is a commitment all the way through the whole project, right up to the ribbon cutting ceremony. So the students will literally grow up with the project, and it'll become a learning laboratory from kindergarten all the way through. And we've had great success already.
Yeah, I love what I hear. I don't know if it's grow up or grow old. This project, we'll see how. We'll see how long it takes. I don't know.
Well, should I send it to you?
Please, and then I'll give it together.
I'll send it to you tonight.
I don't know if Asher finished his question, but, and I don't know if Xavier touched on this with regards to this M15, the local and the express one. I know kids take it every single morning in 125th and 2nd Avenue. Is there going to be any invitation or anything like that?
I don't know on 125th yet because we haven't gotten there. On 117th.
15.
So 117, there's a bus now that's being removed.
115 also, 115 and 2nd Avenue.
119.
But so there's one.
It's going to skip 119, and then you have to take the bus on 116 or 121.
Yeah.
119.
So the express bus goes from 125th to 150.
No, the one we're talking about is local. 119 is local.
So you're not gonna touch the express bus?
No. The only place where we touched the express bus was on 106.
Right.
On the corner of 106, we have to move it down between 103 and 104.
Yeah. Okay, so the express one is going to go straight as it's usually.
Well, right now that's the only change. Right.
It'll go slowly through the traffic, but it will.
Right, so the only change to the
the local one
has been on 106, on the corner of 106, and that was moved to 103, 104. And then now the second change is on 119th Street. We limited that one, and so what that means is that you have to go to 116 to catch the bus, or you have to go to 121 to catch the bus. So if you live on 118, you got to go walk up the block to walk down.
It's not worth it. They would be too close.
Yeah.
The next one would be 117, which is right there. So there will be a walk distance. We have a question from Kira. Kira, go ahead.
Hi, I just wanted to run it back to the question about you guys connecting with CEC4. I'm not sure if you're aware of this, but the Community Education Council is actually a group of representatives that are acting in charge or are acting as representatives of the entire district. So I think that by connecting with us, I'm a seated member on the council. I think that by connecting with us, you would be able to get like a greater point of communication with the schools and also with the district as a whole. And I'd also just really love for you to present at CEC4. I think that'd be great.
Yeah, please let us know when, you guys meet and we'll set something up to present to you. I mean, we already present on the district level and then as Hector mentioned on the local level with most of the schools. I don't think there's any school we haven't projected or presented to it at some point or another, but we're always at, beyond the educational component, if you all know of any groups that would benefit.
I only say, I'm sorry, I only say because I think the CEC is also more suited to handle the actual language that's being used in these situations. So, it's one thing to go to a school and speak to a random parent who is also working 48 hours a week, but it's another thing to go to the group of representatives that are actually set aside in the district to provide feedback and that are actually equipped to do so. Not to say that our parents are not, but it, I think that it should be handled with care. For example, and this is my second question,
Kira,
running it back
he
to
said that
Asher's
they
point.
are willing to go to the meeting, so we'll put you in contact with that.
Okay, okay.
All right, sure. He's open to that already. What was your second question?
My second question was in light of, well, I was going to that. My second question was in light of the whole asthma thing, right? Our community is disproportionately affected by asthma. Are you prepared to provide reparational support in light of that if there are any actual changes in the community, like in children, in response to you, like actually tearing down a school across the street from, or tearing down a property across the street from a school?
I would have to refer you to our legal counsel on that and how that would be handled. I would not be equipped to comment on that right now. Again, it's speculative, but I would have to get from them how that would be handled if an event like that were ever to come to pass.
That's all, thanks.
Thank you, Kira.
Did you still have one more question?
I'm good. I don't know if that was towards me. Sorry.
I mean, he still acts, so he just put them together. I just want to be respectful of everyone's time. We're now at 9:30, and obviously, this is, I just want to make sure, like, the phases that we've been doing, as difficult as they've been to the community, it's not going to be anywhere compared to what is going to happen when you start drilling and all these other issues.
The drilling is going to be really not impactful. It's going to be 80 feet, 100 feet below the surface of the ground. Largely, you should not know that the tunnel boring is passing underneath your feet. The impactful stuff is going to be 106th Street when they do the cut and cover, because that's going to be more like 96th Street, what you saw in phase one, with all the equipment and machinery at the surface cutting down below. So that's going to be the most impactful.
So it's contract 3.
Contract 3 will be the most problem.
Yes.
Yeah, just to add to that, I think Joe, to add to that.
Issues with rodents when you started digging, which we haven't had an issue yet, but when you start digging.
So again,
that was phase one. We heard about that.
Prior to the start of any work on phase 2 of this project, we walked the entire alignment with the Department of Health and Mental Hygiene, the city's RADSAR. We're constantly, we are allowed, we are allowed.
I'm on 116th Street.
We are only allowed to be and mitigate inside our work zones. We can't do anything outside, so we have to, work with DOH, to come in and investigate and see. And what they'll do is when we invite them in, because if you say to me, listen, I got a whole bunch of rodents in my house that I didn't have before you were outside, and we invite DOH to come in and educate you on better practices and et cetera, they're also gonna, cite us if our work zone, they're gonna tell us, you got too much material on the floor, it's not stored properly, you're not picking up the garbage. So we invite that criticism from them as well to make sure we're doing our job, not to exacerbate that condition.
Candy?
No, I just wanted to, just make a suggestion that based off from in the 70s, when you guys did the metal plates and then there weren't any more fundings, it was slippery. And I remember my sister got very, she slipped and had a slip and fall, but it was very bad, the outcome from that. Make sure that if they're gonna put those plates, that it is not the slippery ones, that they could put some type of grates or something on it.
So what we do now is there's tactile paint that can go on there, so it's got grip, like sand in it, so that it's got grip to it. And there's also tape strips that they could put on, so depending on the season, and to try to get ahead of it in the winter, because sometimes that stuff doesn't adhere in the cold. But there is stuff that we can do, and we try to stay in front of that.
Thanks.
All right. Your last question.
I heard one of the concerns was lighting, and I also heard that there has been lighting that is stolen. My question is, what's the height where the light is placed?
The one that the template that they put in, I believe it was about 8 feet high, 6, 7, 8 feet high, just above the work zone there.
You're talking about the one that was stolen?
Yes.
The template.
That one was less than 10 feet.
It wasn't on like a light pole, it was on top of the work zone.
The fence, yeah.
That's easy to stay on.
On the fence.
Can the light post be placed instead of that?
They said, they're our contractor's getting a little frustrated with having it stolen all the time, so they're gonna set it up so it can't be stolen.
Makes sense. All right, thank you all for coming, Joe.
Appreciate you all having us.
We know where you make the big bucks. Always appreciate you.
Yes.
We appreciate your team, Hector, and everyone else. Thank you all for
Thank
coming.
you to the team online,
You
appreciate
guys
it
are
all.
always great.
Excuse
Look
me.
forward to working with you.
And then for that, for us.
Good work.
It's good to like keep all your stuff together. I got papers everywhere. The time to take.
I'll tell you.
Yeah, papers and like that. Even on the truck. I'm like, and I'm scared the box.
Okay, we're gonna, let's wrap it up. We're gonna do roll call.
Oh, good.
Yeah, we gotta do roll call.
All right, well, then let me say this quickly.
We just.
The
could you
meeting is
talk-
still going
Can
on.
we talk right, we're gonna do roll call, so we can wrap it up. If you could just go outside, we could, and we'd like to speak to you, but just right outside.
Okay, can I quickly say then, we have a bill in assembly and to senate from, Eddie Gibbs and Serrano. And every committee for grants and relief for the small businesses. Should be talking to them, and we should be seeing how we can push and advocate for those forward.
All right.
They've said that it's a legislation thing, there is legislation that we goes, so, I mean, no one seems to be listening, that's what we're literally.
The meeting going.
Thank you. We'll be right out.
I've been saying lately that we should be seeing what legislation our electeds have and helping them push it. We have the senator and the assembly
Hey,
member
Xavier,
have both
our
proposed
chair's
it.
talking.
It's okay. And so I would strongly urge that we see how we can support those bills moving forward, because that might actually get them relief.
Is that part of the budget for this season right now, that they working on the second?
I don't
Or
think-
they already got the money
No,
allocated?
no, they don't have it, it's stuck in a committee. We gotta help them try to get it advanced.
That is very important. That's very important. Okay, let's do roll call. We've been here 3 hours and it's been great. Appreciate you all, because this will be the most impactful project that this community facing. For years.
Jose Altamirano.
Present.
Leslie Colon. Rosa Diaz. Jennifer Meyer. Nelson Rama.
Present.
Beverly Pavon.
Present.
Deborah Santiago.
Yeah, here.
Candy Beth.
That's good, I mean, here.
Jason Thompson. We have forum.
Oh, you didn't know my name? Say my name.